What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to episode 48 of the Silver and Gold. I'm Josh.
Mike.
Today, we're going to be joined by a very special guest who has been on the show before. Last time they were on the show was about like 41 episodes ago on episode 7. It was last year we did, the 2023 NFL season preview for the 49ers and the Raiders coming off the joint practices. This year, we're going to have him give predictions for the 2024 NFL season. I also, last year, brought the house down and completely took down the entire Wi-Fi grid of my house with the introduction. So I'll keep it a little bit brief, but a lot of people are saying that this special guest is the second embodiment of Happy Gilmore. It's real life Happy Gilmore. He's probably got the best sneaker game out of all the 49ers media members. It's none other than the 49ers YouTube empire creating Grant Cohn.
Yes.
Thank you very much. That was a really generous intro. How are you, Josh, and you, Mike? Good to be back. It's an honor.
I'm doing pretty good.
I too am doing good. It is good to see you.
Man. It's good to see you guys too, man. It's great.
No, thank you for coming back on the show. We're going to get into some topics mainly stemming from we're going to begin at recapping the finale of the preseason, because it's not very often that the 49ers and the Raiders are able to play. So, Mike, I'll let you take the floor if you want to open up this topic.
Well, I just got to start with, was that the best preseason game ever? I don't usually care going into the fourth quarter, but for some reason, I was just into this game.
It actually was a good game. There were exciting plays that went back and forth. But what's funny is they used to do the Niners-Raiders preseason game every year. And then I think it was 2013 at Candlestick. There were 3 or 4 giant brawls and maybe a stabbing or two. It was awful. And they were and both teams were we're not doing this anymore. But then 10 years pass and the Raiders moved to Vegas and they're thinking, let's give it another shot. It could be fine. Let's give it another shot. And then another huge brawl where some person has a chair. They're beating. It's damn, man. That's why you don't really want to go to preseason games, because people drink a lot. And then they realize 10 seconds into the game that nothing counts or matters. And they're like, man, I'm mad. And I don't know why I'm mad, but it's your fault. I'm just saying, it's violent.
Yeah. And it looked like, I saw that video. It looked like they might have been in the third deck. So it's just third deck festivities.
Yeah. Just pay a little bit more money, get a nicer spot. Be with the aristocrats.
Hey, it's a small price to pay for
not
at least fun preseason.
Yeah. Sorry.
At least fun preseason football. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? There's some really boring preseason games.
That was not one of them, man. It came down to the end. The final play was just incredible. The players left it all out in the field. Tanner Mordecai, all of them. The Raiders too. I think it was nice that it was a tie, because both teams deserve to win.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did anything besides that final play stand out to you from either team? Maybe a player that, maybe jumped out? I know it was mainly third stringers, but there also was a huge portion of the game where the 49ers starters were in. So I don't know if anything jumped out to you. Sure.
I know this is a Raiders show and I just don't really cover them. So I was more focused on the Niners, and I hadn't heard of any of the Raiders players on the field. Carter Bradley, Nathan Peterman actually played. That was incredible. But Jordan Mason again, when he plays in these preseason games, he looks like he's almost too good to be out there. It looks a little too easy for him. And also he just takes defenders for a ride. He looks really good. And then also I think Jacob Cowing has been a real pleasure to watch this preseason. I like being critical or focusing on issues with a team, because I think that's journalism. But at the same time, a guy like him should be discussed. I mean, when was the last time the Niners had a 4-3 receiver who was a threat on short routes, intermediate routes, deep routes, screens, and gadget plays, and punt returner?
I couldn't
I'm not
name
saying he's a Pro Bowler, but like that's a very expansive skill set that I just can't remember the Niners having on their team.
Yeah, I can't remember either. And I do want to clarify one thing that you said. So you said this is a Raider show. It's both a 49ers and a Raider show. We talk about topics on both teams. So I just want to clarify that if anybody's
I'm so sorry I said that.
and
I don't
is
know
new
what
to
I
the
was
channel.
thinking.
No, I think
I
that's
know
enough
what you
for
meant.
Grant.
I think the Niner hat should have been the giveaway. We got a Niner hat and a Raider hat. I just needed to use my eyes. My bad.
Yeah, no, that's enough questions for Grant. Thank you for
Yeah, I'm
joining
done.
the show. No, I'm just playing.
I'm out.
Mike, do you have any other questions for Grant, pertaining to the preseason finale?
Yeah, I mean, even as a Raider fan, obviously doing this podcast, I do look at it through a certain lens now, like watching the Niners too, and I couldn't help and sit there and just think, why are the starters still in? Do you think, in your opinion, that the starters played too long in this game?
Well, I think what's interesting is like if you went back to the previous game, the Niners played Brock Purdy and a couple starters, but basically rested most of their starters against the Saints who played their starters. So the Niners had an opportunity to play starters against starters in week 2 of the preseason and passed on it, and then played their starters against third stringers in week 3. It's like, what?
Yes.
What did you get out of that? How did it help all of your starters to go up against the Raiders third stringers and frankly struggle at times? Like they didn't score every time they had the ball. I mean, I would think that the Raiders third stringers came out of that game feeling really energized and confident. Like, wow, we can hang with the 49ers. So yeah, it seemed like kind of strange. Strange planning all around from Kyle Shanahan. Yes. Why then? Why do you wait until the third game to play your starters when the second game was probably the time?
Yeah. I've just always understood the preseason is like the final game is for the backups. This is when we're deciding like who's making the team and who's not.
Right.
So like to me, like Josh and I have had discussions on this, but like to me, it's like, why would I risk having somebody like even a Jordan Mason who's not the number 1 running back, but he's playing like one? Why would I risk him getting hurt? Or, I mean, really, my next question is, pertaining to Leonard Floyd and Yetur Gross-Matos and the fact that they both got hurt in this game. I believe they're the two projected, or at least one of them's a projected starter opposite Nick Bosa. So if they're both down for a couple weeks, like who's going to step up?
Robert Beal Jr. I mean, it doesn't mean he's going to step up. That's just the next guy up. And he's going to make the team just because he's a defensive end who isn't injured. I mean, really, like, you could talk about the big takeaways from this preseason game, but ultimately they don't matter at all. And all that matters is who gets hurt.
Yep.
How many players got injured in a game that didn't count? And for the Niners, it was 2 players at their thinnest position. I mean, going into the game, you're thinking like they're kind of 3 deep at the end. Drake Jackson is out and Robert Beal hasn't asserted himself. So they'd like to be 4 deep at the end. They're 3 deep. Now they're 1 deep. And at least for the time being. So that's not what you want coming out of the final preseason game, to your point. Like, I agree. It used to be 4 preseason games, right? Third one was the dress rehearsal. And the fourth one was just for the backups. Well, now it seems like teams are looking at it as the second one is the dress rehearsal. Third one for the backups, except for the 49ers who dance to the beat of their own drum.
Do you think that they had like a get right game in mind, like sort of like the longest yards, the longest yard? You know how Adam Sandler was like pitching it to the warden, and it's like you just need a get right game.
Yeah, maybe that was what it was. I don't know.
That's why they were saving.
I think Kyle, like, there's the kind of coaches that don't play their starters at all. And I guess the kind of coaches that play them in the second game. And then the kind of coaches that wait till the third. I think Kyle likes being, unique, doing things that other people don't do. Like he played Brock Purdy with no starters against starters. Like that was insane. But when Kyle does it, it's like, oh, that's genius? Smart? It's like, no, but he did it.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, and speaking of starters that Brock Purdy has been without, and the entire team has been without, I think it's a good moment to jump over to Brandon Ayuk. You know, the thing that nobody's been talking about lately, you know, the one player that everybody has just been missing.
Who?
Exactly.
I forgot about him.
What is your prediction on how the contract situation will end?
I think they're going to trade him. That's my prediction. I feel like the 49ers are trying to craft the narrative before it happens. Maybe I'm cynical, but I think what they're trying to show is, look, we wanted to keep Brandon. We made every effort to keep Brandon. We made him this offer, that offer. Like our first, second, and third choice was to keep Brandon. And we took this down to the very end because that's how much we wanted him. He just wouldn't cooperate. He wouldn't play ball. Like he wouldn't negotiate with us. He was unreasonable. We offered him $30+ million a year. He wouldn't take it. And so we have to trade him to Pittsburgh the night before the regular season starts for picks next year. And it's not because we're incompetent. It's because Brandon's difficult. I think that's what they're trying to position them. That's how they're trying to position the whole narrative before it happens. That's my best guess.
Mm-hmm. And do you have any idea, or do you get any sense of when this could all be resolved?
Yeah, like the week before the draft. Last year, Nick Bosa signed his extension 4 days before the season opener. So from Ayuk's perspective, the Niners just created a precedent, right? Like if you're patient enough, they'll cave right before the season. So they've given him an offer. He could sign that the night before the season starts. He'll wait until 4 days before the season is here. And I think that's when something will happen. Either an extension will be signed or a trade will be consummated right before the season.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I just wanted to clarify because you said a week before the draft. Did you mean a week before the season starts, or
that's exactly what I meant? English is eluding me right now. The English language. Just thank you very much. I mean, bear with me here. It's like me and Kyle Shanahan. Who is better at speaking, me or him? I don't really know. Maybe Kyle these days. I'm not doing great.
You know, I was listening. I think it was Jacob Cowing was speaking, and it just kind of sounded like a carbon copy of Shanahan.
There were a lot of ums.
Mm-hmm. And so I don't know. I've kind of gotten to a point where I don't need to listen to Shanahan speak to know exactly how the press conference is going to go. He's pretty predictable now. There was that point in time where like nobody knew what was going on with Trey Lance. Nobody knew what was going on, you know, with Jimmy Garoppolo, and like it was kind of interesting. But ever since then, like, you know, I'd say everything besides the Ayuk situation is pretty settled. How do you feel like the 49ers have handled this Brandon Ayuk situation, though?
I don't think they've handled it well. I feel like, I guess if they extend him right before the season starts, you can't knock him too much because they did the same thing with Bosa last year. It took a long time and it was dramatic, but it ultimately got done. I guess, but like if they trade him right before the season starts, it's like, dude, where did you think this was going? Why didn't you trade him before the draft? Why are you trading him now for picks next year that you hopefully can trade to another team for a player that'll help you now? Like, how did it get to this? It feels like obviously not plan A. It's not what you wanted to happen. And you're trying to salvage a bad situation because you didn't get out in front of it. Like, that's on you. It's been pretty much documented that they could have signed him last year for less. They could have signed him earlier in the offseason for less. They always take a long time. They drag their feet, and I don't know why. And it burned them this year. That's the way I look at it.
Yeah, and I would even add the other issue with kind of dragging your feet on this is you allow other teams to sign a Jalen Waddle or today a CeeDee Lamb, and the price just goes up. So it just feels like as more time goes, is the breaking point just getting stronger and stronger, and like the difference between what the Niners are willing to give up and what Ayuk is looking for.
Yeah, it's like it seemed like the Niners were trying to take a hard line with Ayuk. Like, okay, we'll offer you 25 plus. And like that could have got the job done last year. It might have been able, like maybe 27 would have got the job done in April. But they wanted to play hardball, and now in freaking late August, they're scrambling and be like, okay, now we'll offer you $30 million a year. Like you could have done that. It would have got the job done. Now you're doing it like desperately, and it's not enough. So how do you come out of here looking smart? Like all you're gonna do is assassinate Ayuk's character if he ends up leaving and being like, oh, he was immature. We couldn't do business with him. Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I'm not taking sides. All I know is you guys lost if that's what happens. Mm-hmm. Or they could try to make him play on the 5th-year option. I just don't see why he would. I would think he would definitely sit out a few games, I would imagine. I mean, and then whatever the Niners trade offers for Ayuk were from Pittsburgh or whatever, like go down. Like, oh, we only get him for 15 games instead of 17. Well, here's a second and a 7th. Oh, it's only 14 games? Like just a second, you know? So this is a deadline deal. They have to make up their minds in like 12 days.
I think you bring up a pretty good point on, last year they extended Bosa like literally week 1.
That was an excellent point, not a pretty good point. What are you talking about, Josh?
No, it's excellent. I'm sorry, I didn't get my English degree like you did.
No, that was a phenomenal point.
UCLA's finest.
Pretty good. That sounds like a B- point. Like, what? No, I'm sorry. I'm kidding.
It's always A+ from Grant. If the 49ers cave in,
it's in the contract that I came on the show that he had to say only the nicest things, only the most superlative. Thank you. But we negotiated this before.
Yeah, we talked about every single time that we reference golf, Grant is the second coming of Happy Gilmore and Tiger Woods.
Yeah, the greatest living golfer. That's also in the contract. Do you think David Lombardi's ego is big? You haven't met me yet.
Oh my God. I want to see the debate. I know why he won't do it. I honestly I'm trying to say this in the most respectful way possible. I think he knows that you would make him look very bad in a debate.
Does he? I don't know. I don't think he thinks that way. I think he thinks he would bury me. I think he doesn't want to even I think from his mind, he's like, I'm so much bigger than Grant. Like, I don't want to acknowledge him from his mind.
I definitely think that he thinks that way. Yeah. But what I will say is a lot of the interactions he has are with people on Twitter where he can just ignore when they bring up the times that he's not critical from the team. And if it was like a live debate and you pressed him on something that, he
has nothing to gain from that.
Exactly.
Right.
So I think that's why he wouldn't do it.
Anyway, that's enough of him.
Yeah. We've got A+, Grant, Happy Gilmore, Tiger Woods, Grant starring Happy Gilmore 2, filming this fall. Oh, see, he's already got the club ready.
I got the 9-iron ready just in case. Just in case I need to hit a ball.
So let me reel it in.
Okay.
Let me sink the
Okay, let's talk about it. Football.
If the 49ers cave in and pay Ayuk what he wants, will this be the new expectation for people looking to get their new contracts next year? Like, does this set a new precedent? Because last year, Bosa was like right before week 1. This Ayuk thing is dragging on for longer than anybody could have anticipated. Before, I even remember other stars on the team, it would take forever for them to get their contract negotiations. And it was like a thing like, oh, yeah, Parag, they're very good at what they do. They like to offer very minimal offers right up front. How do you feel like this precedent is going to, I guess, change going forward?
Well, I think it's very interesting, and I think the Niners are thinking about this because they did it last year. They caved and made Nick Bosa the highest paid non-quarterback ever at the time, literally 4 days before the season started. All Nick Bosa had to do was say no to every offer and wait patiently and not show up, and the Niners at the very end with their tail between their legs like, okay, here's whatever you want. And Nick was like, thank you, and was like, snatch that shit out of their hands like, yeah, that's what I freaking thought. And so now other players are going to think like, well, if I'm as confident and patient as Nick, and I'm coming off an all-pro season too, can I win this like staring contest? So if Ayuk wins it the year after Nick wins it, then what's Brock going to do next year? Like, Brock's coming up, and the Niners could offer him $45 million a year, which is good, but not good enough. And Brock could say like, first of all, no. Second of all, like, just talk to me on September 7th. You know what I mean? Like, this negotiation is done, and we'll talk right before the freaking season, like you did with Brandon and Nick. Like, I don't see why a player wouldn't do that, wouldn't wait after the Niners have shown that this is their, like, this is their playbook.
Yeah, why wouldn't they do it? So, in spite of this being, one of the, I guess, craziest contract negotiations that has, been in public domain for the 49ers, there have been other crazy offseason stories in recent memory. I'm wondering if you could pick one that was most distracting to the team between this contract situation with Brandon Ayuk, Jimmy Garoppolo sort of, it was, I guess, understood that he would not be on the team. And then he was throwing on the side and sort of, stealing the spotlight away from Trey Lance, who was supposed to be the starter. And then I guess last season it was Trey Lance versus Sam Darnold, for the quarterback 2 battle. Which one would you say was most distracting? Or if you want to
Jimmy
rank
Garoppolo throwing on a side field was pretty wild. You're trying to show that you're confident in Trey, and then, like, you're not. So that was, but at the same time, like, there was no amount of confidence they could have shown in Trey that would have, like, put confidence in Trey. I feel like part of the issue with Trey is that he wasn't ready. And, like, that's not just physically, but, like, he couldn't step into a huddle and project confidence as a 21-year-old with limited experience. So that was like a distraction, but it was almost like inevitable when they were trying to give the team to a guy who wasn't developed straight up. So this thing with Ayuk feels like just as big or bigger and, like, unnecessary. Like, this is hanging over the whole team, the whole season. He's a really important player. It seems like what's happening behind closed doors with him is more important than anything that's happening at practice. And that's purely because the Niners let this happen. Like, it feels like a big distraction that they created that's unnecessary and ultimately isn't going to help them. That's kind of what makes this particular offseason, like, so ominous. Like, at least with Jimmy, it's like, okay, well, they don't know who their quarterback is, but they know they've won with Jimmy. So there's a feeling that even if, like, they go back to him, like, they could at least have a good year in the short term. But with this Ayuk thing, it's like, is this team falling apart? Like, what is going on? Is this the Super Bowl hangover? Like, it feels way different than what was going on in the past.
Mm. Yeah, real quick, I do see that we have a comment from Papa J. He says, Grant, if Brock were to perform the same as last year, how much do you think that he will be worth? Papa J, I'm going to cut off Grant because we will be discussing Brock Purdy's contract later as a topic. So stay tuned. We will get to, hopefully answer your question.
Stay tuned.
Yeah, stay tuned. Mike, do you want to kick off our next topic?
Yeah. Let's talk about another player with a contract issue ongoing, Trent Williams. Could the Niners actually play into the regular season without Trent Williams?
Yeah, I could see that. He wants more guaranteed money. He wants to be the highest paid player in the league this year. The Niners like to save money where they can. He misses a couple games every year anyway. Is he really ready to play week 1 against the Jets? I could see the Niners letting this drag on for a few weeks and just taking game checks away from him and finally getting it done week 2 or week 3. Maybe they'll get it done the next couple of weeks, but it seems like they got to get the Ayuk thing done first.
Yeah. I know Trent Williams is kind of a special case, if you will, because in the past he has, for lack of a better term, threatened to retire. I don't know if he's done this to the Niners, but I know, like, with Washington before, but I think he's at Yes. Yeah. That was obviously a very special case, but
Yeah.
could the Niners potentially mismanage this situation to the point where maybe he just opts to retire?
Yeah, I mean, if they play hardball with him, it seems like he's kind of telling him, like, I'm ready. I'm coming to terms with life after football, and it's not so bad. I'm playing golf. Me and Grant hanging out at Lake Chabot frequently, having a great time. Grant's a little weird, but we're about the same age, and we can. I think he's into. I think he's sort of got one foot in retirement right now, And I think the other foot thinks like, look, I can show up whenever the hell I want and be the best left tackle in football. I know I'm 36, but I still can do that. Like Bo Jackson could do that. He played baseball, would do no training camp. His season would end, like October, and then he would just cruise over to the Raiders, no training camp, week 4, and be like, Marcus Allen, get in the freaking bench. I got this. Like Trent Williams is like that. But eventually he won't be. Maybe this is the last year where he can just roll out of bed and be the best. And then I don't think he'll want to play anymore. So I think he's starting to realize that like golf's a lot of fun. He's probably going to be good at that too. So now he's got to figure out what they're going to do here. Like you can't just give him 3 years of guaranteed money because what if he retires next year? You're in trouble.
Question. So, you're in the locker room, more often than I'd say anybody who talks about the team, typically is. I want to know if Trent Williams does just show up and the speculation that he just didn't want to, participate in training camp is true, could that fracture relationships within the locker room?
Isn't that what Nick did last year?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's business. But it's starting to like how many players are going to end up doing this? Like, doesn't that hurt the culture of your team? Like, shouldn't you want to? You're a captain. You're a captain. Don't you like want to be there and at least like be in the meetings and lead by example? You're the oldest guy there. Like, no. So, okay. So if Trent doesn't have to go to practice, then Brandon doesn't have to go to practice, then, it seems like a special privilege that people are like shooting for. I don't think that helps, but you always have guys like Debo who are out there grinding. Brock got some guys.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I mean, I guess the way that I look at it is if you're trying to build a team that can win the Super Bowl, how are you going to build the team being so separate? If you're not practicing together, where's that cohesion being built? So
it's a good point.
Yeah.
The combo clique will join us later, but they're not. They're still relaxing because it's been a long year.
Yeah. It's probably a little mix of both, where it's the player and maybe they just decide like, I'm in this predicament with my contract. I'm going to let it play out. And also what we talked about earlier of like players seeing past years of Nick Bosa, even Debo Samuel with his contract before, of like it can play out till the final week of the preseason. It doesn't matter. Like the Niners will probably get it done. So maybe it's the players, but I could also see it being where it's the franchise and it's like, if you want your guys in there, offer them the right deal. So
yeah, simple as that.
Yeah, I think last year it was Chris Jones on the Chiefs who didn't play week 1, and the Chiefs lost to the Detroit Lions week 1 and then signed. I think that was it Thursday Night Football, Monday Night Football? It doesn't matter. Papa J asks, do you think they will sign Williams much faster if the offensive line fails miserably against the Jets?
Yeah, I think that's a great call. Like that's exactly what happened with the Chiefs. They played one game without Chris Jones, lost, and signed him. Like I could see Trent Williams doing the same thing. Like, okay, you want to play hardball, Parag? Like, okay, see what happens week 1 at home, Monday Night Football. My phone will be on and next to me as soon as you're ready to talk.
Yeah, it might have to be Kyle Shanahan making that call. Like, what are we doing? Before letting Trent Williams ride off into the sunset.
I mean,
let's go ahead and move on.
Let me get real cynical for a second, though. Mm-hmm. What if the Niners just let all this happen? Like, no Trent, okay, no Ayuk, okay. Like, well, we're not going to have Hufanga and Greenlaw. Like, why should we rush anyone back if like we're already going to miss like 4 or 5 of our guys? Why don't we just like sort of aim to get healthy in October and see if we can tread water? Like they started 2-4 in 2021 and 3-4 in 2022. What if they like just have a mediocre start, tread water, go real slow with all these guys and hope to like hit their stride mid-October and go on a run? I mean, we've seen them do it before. Like, do you really need Trent Williams out there week 1 if you're like secretly worried that you're going to lose anyway? Because you don't have Greenlaw, Hufanga, Ayuk. I mean, is McCaffrey going to play week 1? We don't even know. And how could they possibly win without Ricky Pearsall is my real question. I mean, God.
Yeah. Ricky Pearsall was one of Mike's guys come draft time, but obviously, college versus stepping foot on the NFL field is much different.
He might be good. We don't know. He's just hurt.
Yeah. I quickly want to move on to our next topic about, whether or not the 49ers are going to, experience the aforementioned Super Bowl hangover. Based on what you've seen at 49ers training camp and the preseason, does 2024 seem like it's going to be a Super Bowl hangover season, in your opinion?
Yeah, yes and no. It feels like they're going to have a slow start, but they had slow starts in 2021 and 2022 and went to the NFC Championship both times. So I don't know, but I feel like the difference this year is Kyle. In the past, they fell short, but I don't think the whole team looked at it as Kyle's fault. I think this year the team looks at it as Kyle's fault. They had the team, they had the lead, they won the coin flip, and Kyle blew it. And I think it's going to be interesting if they do start out 2-4 this year. Are they going to have that same belief in him to be able to pull off that run that they did 2 years ago? Or are they starting to look at him as like, dude, what is your problem? We're the best team in the league and you're fumbling this. I don't know. Or they could just have hella injuries, man. So far, that's sort of been the theme of the offseason. Just injury after injury after injury, which is something that happens with a Super Bowl hangover.
Yeah. So, your initial answer was yes and no. So I want to, I guess, branch off into two different scenarios. Give us, make the case if it is going to be a Super Bowl hangover. What is giving you that, that notion, and how does it compare to the vibes that you got from the team last season, in terms of their preparation and injury luck?
They seemed energized and determined last year. Like they felt their season was cut short and they were like dying to get back on the field. That's what it felt like. All of them, except for Nick Bosa, who was going through this quiet standoff. This year, it feels like they're exhausted, they're burnt out, and they're not particularly eager for the season to start or ready for the season to start. Like they're like, yeah, we've done this a lot of times. We've climbed this mountain a lot of times. Like we'll flip the switch when it's time. We know what it takes, but it doesn't seem like a team that's itching to start the season. Like they don't have their team yet. They haven't worked it out with two of their most important players. They're not quite ready.
So, in your opinion, you wouldn't say that if they did get off to a slow start, it's not too late for them to turn it around in the season. You can't count them out.
Definitely can't count them out. They're one of the older teams in the league. They've done this before. They frequently make a trade at the trade deadline, which changes things. They do that. So, and they have so much pressure on them. They're not just going to fall off and say, oh, well, unless it can't, of course, there's hella injuries. Like if Christian McCaffrey goes down, if Brock Purdy goes down, this team's in a lot of trouble. And they've had injuries at quarterback and running back any number of times. So we'll see. If Trent Williams misses a few games and Brock Purdy goes down, I would wonder what people would think of Kyle Shanahan then, because it would be his fault.
Yeah. And so if the 49ers do not experience a Super Bowl hangover, what would be the reason? What would give you optimism, on why they could overcome what many teams have experienced after losing a Super Bowl?
Talent, leadership, and maybe an infusion of youth finally. The last two drafts sucked, but this draft seems like, Ricky Pearsall aside, and he's just been hurt. A lot of the other young guys have made impressions. Pooney's starting. Renardo Green seems to be in the nickel defense. Garendo looks like a good kick returner. Malik Mustafa could be starting. Freaking Jacob Cowing looks nice. And then Kingston and Bethune look like guys who could potentially become starters down the line. That's huge. And I think that's kind of what, and the emergence of Jordan Mason. This team needs something fresh, something new to propel it, because the core, the Cabo clique, whatever you want to call them, they just seem worn out, a little tired, a little old. So Jacob Cowing, Jordan Mason, Renardo Green, Dominic Pooney, that next wave is big. And Brock's really good. They can keep him upright and give him some time. He's a really good quarterback. I don't see him just doing the Jimmy Garoppolo fall off fade like Jimmy Garoppolo did.
No, I think you bring up, a lot of excellent points, A+ points, like
thank
we
you so
stated
much.
in the contract.
You almost said pretty good. I almost lost my mind.
Yeah, no, Purdy good. And we're gonna talk about Brock Purdy, right now. Let's talk about, obviously there's an elephant in the room right now that is affecting Brandon Ayuk's contract, that's affecting Trent Williams' contract, because the 49ers understand, and Jed York even understands, because he was already talking about Brock's contract over around the Super Bowl. What does Brock Purdy have to show this season in order to earn a massive extension with the 49ers? And has he already shown enough to where, Jed York, John Lynch, Kyle Shanahan are already going to open the wallets for him?
That's a good question. I think Jed York's ready, but Kyle Shanahan's different, and you never really know what's up his sleeve or what he's planning or what he wants. I think he's already done enough. Like, you compare his resume to Tua's, you could argue that Brock's is better. He hasn't played as much football as Tua, but he's done more in the playoffs. I mean, his numbers are better. His resume is better, shorter, but better. And Tua was getting 55. So, if I were Purdy's agent, I'd be saying, like, this guy is worth 56. And then next year, the cap goes up 10, 12, 13%. So he'll probably be worth 65. That's crazy. From the agent's perspective, that's what he's worth. From the Niners' perspective, like, absolutely not. Like, you are a very good quarterback, not a great quarterback, not an elite quarterback. Here's 45. That's more than enough. That's what Kirk Cousins is getting. We think you guys are in the same tier. And then that's where things could get weird. What if they're $20 million a year apart and the Niners offer is more than fair? Like, I wouldn't pay him $65 million a year. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? Like, 2 or 3 quarterbacks should get that. And the problem with the NFL is that, like, 14 quarterbacks will get that. And the 12 teams that are spending on that shouldn't be are probably in, mediocre purgatory.
I want to say, like, the top 8 to 10 quarterbacks that are, as far as in pay right now, are not nearly as accomplished. Maybe one of them compared to Brock Purdy. Yeah. That makes things interesting.
Like, Jordan Love just got $56 million a year for, like, half a good season.
Trevor Lawrence.
Yeah, like, Purdy has a really easy argument that he's worth, that he should be the highest paid player in the league when he gets his extension. And I just don't see the Niners giving him that. But, and we have maybe he wins the Super Bowl, wins the MVP, and it's a freaking no-brainer. But short of that, I could see, look how contentious it's been between Brandon and the 49ers. Why wouldn't it be that way with Brock? Maybe, I don't know. Maybe because he's white. I'm just kidding. I didn't want to go there. But maybe he's like, you know what? Christian, Brock, we like you. We'll get it in 2 weeks. No problem. It's bad optics. Christian wanted an extension 2 weeks. 2 weeks.
I never thought of this.
I'm sorry. I'm not saying the Niners are racist, because they're obviously not. Of course they're not. But, like, it's bad optics. Like, did they think about this? You bust the chops of every black player who wants an extension, but a white guy, it's like, oh my God.
There was, like, no word of Christian McCaffrey having any quarrels with
Again, I'm not calling the Niners racist, because they're not. But they got to think about the optics. Optics matter.
Yeah, Brandon Ayuk just bought a house. I get that he has to pay mortgage, but we're running a business here. Christian McCaffrey has a wedding. Oh, well, we got to send party favors.
Think of this as a wedding gift.
A wedding gift. Yeah. Papa J asks, Grant, if you were running the 49ers, how much would you say that Brock is worth, in your opinion?
45. I'm right there with Kyle.
45?
Yeah. Because he's really good, but he's good in the context of the Niners structure right now. And I don't think you can take away a bunch of weapons and say that he'd be just as good. Like, you can do that with Josh Allen and Mahomes. Like, take away all their weapons, give them a freaking tight end and an offensive line and say, go be great. And they sure will. But Brock, I don't think he's that kind. I think he's like Dak, where he's a hell of a quarterback, but you can't just take away his weapons. So if you're paying him $60 million a year, I think you're in trouble. I think the Dolphins are in trouble. I think the Lions are in trouble long term. And I think the Niners will be in trouble if they do that. I think Kyle knows it. That's one thing I got to give him credit. He's not just super eager to spend hella money on a quarterback that he's not absolutely certain is elite. So, be interesting to see what happens.
Mm-hmm. Like,
Yeah.
no, go ahead.
Sorry, no. It just all of this with Ayuk and everything that you just said right now, it makes me wonder if the Niners could potentially put themselves in a spot next year, like in exactly a year from now, or actually 11 months from now, right when training camp starts, and it's like, where's the contract for Purdy? If they don't have another quarterback on the roster that can start games, could they be pinned into like, we need to get him out there before training camp? Because I feel like, with Ayuk or even Trent Williams, it's like, all right, this sucks. They're not here. But when it's the quarterback, I feel like it's a completely different story. Could that potentially force them into a spot where it's like, all right, fine, like, here you go, you know?
Yeah, I could see that. I mean, but at the same time, if their plan is to lowball them and say, "Look, we love you, buddy, but you are partially a product of our system and our supporting cast, and you need to acknowledge that. You need to give a little money back so we can keep it or like keep it going." What if Brock says, "No, I want market rate," just like Brandon wanted market rate, and Bosa wanted market rate, and Trent wanted market rate, and Christian wanted market rate. Like, I want market rate. I've already played for free for 3 years. Like, you owe me money. You owe me millions of dollars. Absolutely not. I mean, so
imagine, I was just gonna say, could you imagine if Brock Purdy, went on like interviews talking about receivers that he would love to throw to across the league and just pulled the Brandon Ayuk card?
I don't think he will. I just don't.
I don't think
he
so
will.
either. But
does that mean that he's going to just like take the first offer the Niners give him and say, "Oh my God, thank you so much. It's so generous. Let's start OTAs." Like, I'm sure the Niners hope that, but I don't know.
Business is business. He's got to be.
Again, we talked about it creating a precedent, right? Like, if they cave to Ayuk now, they're asking for this to play out again next year with Purdy.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I just really quickly want to ask, we talked about what Brock Purdy has to do in order to earn that contract. Let's flip the coin and let's talk about what would Brock Purdy have to do in order to not earn, a massive extension from the 49ers. What would have to happen for that not to happen?
I don't see him having like a huge regression because I think he's a very good quarterback. But what if he gets injured again? What if he has another season-ending injury? That would be 2 and 3 years. And all of a sudden you're looking at him as like, okay, like, are you like Jimmy in the sense that like we just can't count on you to stay healthy? Because starting quarterbacks are supposed to be, available. And if his style of play, whatever, for whatever reason leads to big freaking injuries, then the Niners will hold that against him. I don't know. I mean, if Trent Williams isn't out there, all bets are off. And even if he is out there, that's one player. That would be one. That would be one. I just don't see him like, well, he has thrown a bajillion interceptions in camp. If that actually becomes an issue and he starts throwing fewer touchdown passes and more picks, then that would be a problem. Because, I mean, you think we know Brock? I think he's 17-4 in his career. It's not a lot of games, man. What if he goes 6-10 this year? No one expects that to happen, but like that's almost half of his career, one season. So yeah, a lot at stake for him this year.
Mm-hmm. Question. So, I think last time we asked you about whether or not Kyle Shanahan goes and talks to the quarterbacks, and a lot of the 49er community completely dismisses anything bad that Brock Purdy does in training camp. Oh, he's testing things out, and you are regularly, you point them out. I just want to know, how does Kyle react when Brock Purdy throws those interceptions? Does he yell in the headset? Does he, how do you think Kyle Shanahan feels? I know it's hard to get in the mind of somebody else, but what do you think?
It's a great question. I can't answer honestly. I haven't been focusing on him. What I do is I watch Brock. And Brock gets pissed. He either gets pissed at himself or the receiver. He turns his head away. He does the chin strap pull. Like, if he was just trying things out, why would he be getting pissed? Brock's upset about it. So, it doesn't seem like what he's trying to do. Yeah, and I don't think Kyle Shanahan's the kind of guy that like takes that in stride because you're making his system look bad. Like, are you trying to imply, Brock, that his system leads to interceptions? I don't think so. It's you messing up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no. A+ answer. Just, so far you've got a perfect report card.
Oh my God. Thank you so much.
Valedictorian.
Appreciate it.
I want to switch the topic away from Brock Purdy, unless you have an answer that is Brock Purdy for this question. But this is a fill in the blank question. So let's see if you get another A+ on this. On this question. Our topic is the last dance for who? Fill in the blank. The 49ers star player who will spend their final season on the 49ers in 2024 will be blank.
I could go for like an obvious answer here and say Trent. Damn it. I was going to say Trent Williams last, but it's Trent Williams. I think it's his last year. I was going to say like Travarius Ward, kind of obvious, going to be a free agent next year, but then I blew the setup and I messed it up. So yeah, Trent Williams. I think this is it. I think he already is starting to think about retirement. He's envisioning it. He's living his retirement life, and he wants probably one last payday, one last raise, and I think he'll be done. That's my guess. Again, I think, and I never played professional football or any football, but it's so painful and it's such a grind that once your mind starts going to retirement, it's hard to come back from that. And I think he's starting to go. So last year for Trent.
So, the name that jumped to my mind personally was Deebo Samuel. If Brandon Ayuk is to get extended, could you see a scenario where it is Deebo next year?
Yes. And that's another reason why I don't think Ayuk's going to get extended, because that would mean that this is Deebo's last year. And Kyle loves Deebo. They get along so well. Kyle and Ayuk don't seem to get along so well. And Kyle seems to like to surround himself with people that he gets along with. So
maybe
I'm not so sure that this is Deebo's last year. I feel like Kyle and Deebo are going to be working together for a while.
Maybe that went a little bit into the decision to draft a guy like Ricky Pearsall.
Correct. Javon Hargrave could be entering his last season with the Niners. He's super expensive and hasn't lived up to it yet, so he needs to be like 10, 11 sacks in a Pro Bowl this year, or else he's probably getting cut.
How many years does George Kittle still have left on his contract?
I think he has 2 more. I think he signed through 2025. So we'll see with Kittle, right? Like his body started to break down midway through last year. He had a core muscle thing, and he played through it, and he finally got surgery last year. So let's see if he can make it through another season.
And then how about the spokesperson for the team, Kyle Juszczyk?
Oh, that's a good call. I didn't even think about him anymore. I would hope that this is the last year, his last year on the team, but at the same time, like, it seems like he has like a lifetime contract. Him and Elijah Mitchell have lifetime contracts with the 49ers, and I don't know why.
So, Mike, do you want to kickstart us for our next topic?
Yeah.
All right, let's talk about the Super Bowl window.
Yes. How long will this current 49ers Super Bowl window last?
Are we sure it's not over?
Yeah. Is this
it might have ended last year. They're going to try to show that they can extend it one more year this year, but they're not really convincing anyone right now. They seem a little burnt out, and maybe as long as they have Brock Purdy, they'll have a window. But I think the window could change pretty soon, where a lot of these older guys start to leave and they build around Brock and guys who were drafted the last few years. And Bosa and Warner. Brock, Bosa, Warner, Deebo. That could be the team. I don't even know how much longer Christian's going to be here. I know he just got extended. He's a running back. I don't know. I feel like they're trying to hold on to it for one more year. They're the oldest team in the league. If it doesn't happen this year, they got to retool. So I just don't think they're going to win the Super Bowl this year, not to be a spoiler. I thought last year was their best chance. They probably should have won it last year. And this year is going to be frustrating.
So if they're not going to win the Super Bowl this year, how do you predict that the season is going to play out?
I think they start slow. I think they do rally. but I don't think they get the number 1 seed. I feel like they finished with 10 or 11 wins. Let's call it 11. And they have eventually have to go on the road in the playoffs. And if let's say they play Detroit on the road, Detroit's really good at home. Detroit's way better at home indoors than they are on the road outdoors. And that could be the difference. Like they beat Detroit by 3 points last year at home in the NFC Championship game. Just a different venue could be the difference. Or if, Philly or Green Bay could be better this year. It's or the Rams. So I just feel like the Niners are going to make a run. They're too talented not to unless the whole team gets hurt. But I think it's going to be a little too – they're going to come up a little short. 13 wins 2 years ago, 12 last year, 11 this year. That's the slow fade of an old team.
Another A+.
Oh, thank you. My God. I could have stopped, but I was like, let me get that plus.
No, you
So
gotta keep it going.
aside from the record prediction, do you have a breakout player this year?
Yeah. I wouldn't consider Diamador Lenore a breakout player. Like he's been a starter. He might be a Pro Bowler if that's what you call a breakout player. I think Diamador Lenore could go from being, good player that Niners fans know to Pro Bowler. And then the Jordan Mason emergence, I think the Niners could go from like it's the Christian McCaffrey offense to actually there's like a thunder and lightning thing going on here because Christian's a little bit older and he's had this calf injury on and off for like a year and got to be careful. So Mason's big too. And then Cowing. Let's say Ayuk actually does get traded 2 days before the season like I have predicted. I don't think that Ricky Pearsall is going to be stepping up anytime soon or Chris Conley. I think Cowing's the one who's making that first move. And the trio of him, Jennings, and Debo is interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And Pooney. Pooney's big.
Yeah,
like,
no.
Pooney could be the Niners' best offensive lineman if Trent Williams isn't there right now. Pooney could be so good, they'd be like, should we play him at left tackle? I don't know.
Do you foresee if Trent Williams misses that they would stick him at left tackle? Or do you think that
they haven't given him any reps
right
there, so probably not, but maybe they should have.
Yeah, true.
Yeah.
Really quickly, before we switch over to, we want to get your Raiders prediction. I know you don't focus on the Raiders at all. Before we get your Raiders prediction and get you out of here today, I want to address a couple comments. Papa J is asking how Eric Sobert has been performing at camp. And then, I guess more specifically asking, do you see him being a second string fullback?
That's a great question. No, I don't see him being the second string fullback. I think the second string fullback will be Jake Tonjes, 88. And he actually did play that a little bit in the games. 88 was in the backfield playing fullback. So was Braden Willis. Braden Willis was so bad at it. I'm not sure Braden Willis is going to make the team. I feel like it's going to be Kittle, Sobert, Tonjes, and one of the two second-year guys, Willis or Latu. And, now that I think about it, I wouldn't be surprised if they kept Latu and cut Willis. I mean, he was a 7th-round pick. He can't block. I think he might clear waivers. Whereas some team might claim Latu simply because they had him high on their draft board 2 years ago, a year ago.
It's going to be the Eagles. They always do that.
Yeah.
They liked Trey Sermon. They liked Ty Davis Price. Got both of those guys.
Yeah.
It's going to be so
okay. So I'm predicting Braden Willis doesn't make the team. And Tonjes does.
Very interesting. I guess we'll find out tomorrow, right? That's when the schedule comes out, or not the schedule, 53-man roster.
Cut down.
Yeah. My girlfriend Pia asks, you were perfect.
Sorry, Pia.
Yeah, you were perfect except when you called this a Raider show.
Yeah, you can't get any more than a B- after making that kind of a gaffe. That's a big gaffe. That's fair.
Yeah, C+.
To me, it was still an A+.
Well, thank you.
Personally, I liked it.
Yeah,
And then Joel, who is a recurring viewer of the show, says salute. Joel, thank you for tuning in again. Grant, we're going to ask you one last question before you get out of here, but I will let Mike give you the puppy dog eyes, before you break down the Raiders and, or maybe prop up the Raiders. Mike, I'll let you ask this since this is your team. And this is the only Raider question that we're going to ask Grant today.
Absolutely. I have actually one last Niners question.
Oh,
Just because of what we were just talking about, could you see any surprise cuts for the Niners tomorrow or even tonight?
I don't see that. That's interesting. I don't look at them like they're going to be cutting a bunch of good players. That's the kind of stuff they did in the past because they were so deep. Like, I don't think they're that deep anymore. They still have a lot of stars, but man, they've had 2 bad drafts in a row until this year. And I think, like Drake Jackson being nothing, Robert Beal being nothing, is hurting them big time. So I don't think there's going to be like a bunch of guys that they waive that get claimed. I think they might be the team that's actually like claiming guys. Like if a good D end is out there on waivers, the Niners might be all over that. So interesting question.
Yeah. Yeah. I think from a Raider fan,
Danny Gray's a 3rd round pick could get cut. I think he'll get cut, but like I think we all does he have a catch in the NFL? Any?
I'm not sure he has that. He has that preseason catch that Trey Lance threw him, and we all thought that was going to be a connection for years to come, and then neither of them contributed at all to the 49ers.
Danny Gray officially has 1 catch in 7 targets for 10 yards. He also has 1 rush for 9 yards. So he has 2 touches in his career. He's not making the team.
Yeah.
Sorry.
You're good. Yeah,
that's another reason I don't think they're going to cut Cam Lott. Like, are they really going to cut 2 third-round picks in the same year? Like, that's a lot. I don't think so.
Yeah. I would say from a outside looking in perspective and doing this podcast where it's obviously Niners and Raiders and really breaking down the teams, I've kind of noticed like, man, this team is really top heavy. So some of our last couple of topics, and talking about these contracts, who's going to not be on the team next year. It's very interesting, especially with Brock Purdy's upcoming contract. Very interesting going into the future of this team. So, but to move it on to the Raiders really, really quick, and then we'll get you out of here, which we really appreciate you for all this time that you've given us tonight. Really do appreciate it. So
my pleasure.
Rough record prediction for the Raiders this year from what you see with the Gardner Minshew's and the Max Crosby's and everything in between.
Max Crosby's a great player. Max Crosby's a better player than Nick Bosa. Better against the run. He plays 95% of the snaps as opposed to Bosa, who plays 75%. Better player than Nick Bosa. I don't know why that's not like more like universally agreed upon. But Bosa was a defensive player of the year once. I get it. And he has a brother in the league as a name. But I just don't see the upside with the Raiders. I know they were 5-4 under Antonio Pierce last year. I know they love him. I know they play hard for him. 7-10. I mean, Gardner Minshew. How far are you really going with Gardner Minshew and Aiden O'Connell? It's like, I see what they're trying to do. I think they're kind of trying to be like the Niners. Like, let's not invest in the wide receiver, in the quarterback position unless we have a real stud, which we don't. And so let's get out the best tight ends and yeah. But I don't know, man. Like Gardner Minshew. That's basically my analysis of the Raiders. Gardner Minshew was the best you could do. Like, you couldn't even take Spencer Rattler. You couldn't. Like, what was the plan at quarterback? The team is cool. It's an interesting team. Like, what the hell was the plan at quarterback this year? Gardner? I don't get it. I just don't get that. I don't get it.
Yeah.
So 7-10.
Yeah. I came out of the offseason, like the draft and everything, like pretty optimistic. And for some reason, this training camp has just brought my optimism down to what I would probably consider to be a realistic expectation, which is exactly around the ballpark of what you're saying. So
2 good tight ends, 2 good wide receivers, a great edge rusher. I mean, they have talent. It's just a shame that they didn't like make a more serious addition at quarterback this offseason. Nothing against Gardner, but why stop there? You have Nathan Peterman on your roster. It's not serious. You're unserious. Carter Bradley? Come on.
Yeah.
Come on. Like, he's Gus Bradley's kid. That's great, man. But you could have drafted Spencer Rattler. He looks pretty good. I don't know.
Mike, answer it. What
Like,
what were you
kinda
thinking,
they're
Mike?
kind of like the Seahawks. You got a nice little defense, man. You got some reasons to be. You got defense, you got weapons, but what is that quarterback? What are you doing?
Yeah.
Can't take the Seahawks seriously with Geno. I can't take the Raiders seriously with Gardner. Any quarterback with a name that starts with a G, can't take it seriously. Gardner, Geno, Grant, terrible. It's not a quarterback name.
Grant, I just really quickly want to thank you again for coming onto the channel. Before we get you out of here, Papa J has a comment that I can definitely relate to. It's he says, Grant, in the past I have not been a big fan of yours, but today I have become one.
Thank you.
When I first saw Grant, the first YouTube video that I ever saw Grant do, I think this was after the 49ers, lost the Super Bowl, and it was the offseason, and you were like saying Jimmy Garoppolo's not that good. And I was like, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about. Then week 1, Jimmy Garoppolo looked horrible. And then I tuned back in. I opened my ears, and, Grant, you've seen me in your comment section under many of your videos. I am a huge fan. Without you, this channel would not exist. I want to thank you so much for pioneering the way for not only this channel, but so many 49er content creators. I know you're more specifically a journalist first, content creator second, but I just want to say thank you so much for taking time out of your day to come on the show and pave the way.
You're awfully generous. I mean, I consider you a friend. We go back. We've hung out. You're a hell of a guy. This is a hell of a channel. I've done absolutely nothing to help you. I've been on 2 of your shows. You guys are building this 100% on your own. This is a great thing you guys got going, and it's a pleasure and an honor to be on with you guys. Seriously, thank you.
Yeah, no. If there's any way that I can repay you, just let me know.
Yeah, just send me $200. No problem. I think that'd be.
That was supposed to be the non-disclosure agreement, with that contract. So,
yeah, I take Venmo, PayPal. It's all good. It's no problem.
Yeah,
no, I'm playing.
Promo code COHN on Sleeper. Yeah.
No, if I just download the Sleeper app.
Just download the Sleeper app. .us online.
Yeah, baby. Thank you.
Yeah, but no, thank you, Grant. Do you have any last words before Mike and I take over and let you go on your way with your A+ report card?
Oh man, no, just make sure you like and subscribe to Josh and Mike's channel if you haven't already. I'm sure the people here watching are diehard fans, as I am as well, but I'm just saying, throw some love, throw in a super chat, whatever you got to do. Make it real.
Yeah, everybody, say goodbye to Grant. Grant, thank you. We'll talk soon, man.
Talk soon. Appreciate you guys. Thanks again.
Go subscribe to Grant's channel. It's linked in the description of this. Mike and I are going to go a little bit more in depth of the 2024 predictions, giving our opinions. We'll probably start with the Raiders because that was a lot of 49ers, to talk about. So if you are a 49er fan and you're checking out the channel for the first time, just know we talk about both teams on this channel. If you want to comment, we take comments live. Even if we're not live, we look at the comments. We try to give pretty detailed responses. This is supposed to be a place where, fans can really hang out. I know if you're a 49er fan and you grew up in the Bay Area, or if you're a Raider fan that grew up in the Bay Area, people who were fans of the other team. It's, your friends or family with a lot of people who are 49er fans or Raider fans. If, that's it, whatever was the opposite of what you grew up with. So we want to make this channel for, fans of both teams. We want to make a space where we can discuss both teams, give an outside perspective, and then also, the perspective of a fan of the team. Mike, how'd you think that went with Grant before we, get into our, predictions? You're muted.
Good point. We got dogs barking in the background. F- for me, man. Nah, well, until that moment just now, it was an A+ all the way. So it was a great time as it was a year ago, and I look forward to more episodes where we can get him on and chat it up with him. So
Pia's mom says, "Go Niners! Go Niners indeed!" Woo! Bang, bang! Woo! I just wanted to make sure everybody's still awake because Grant just left. Fossey, tuning back into the show. Fossey, thank you for coming back on to comment and share your thoughts. What's up? Grant just left. If you want to say what's up, maybe send him a DM on Twitter. But Mike and I are going to be talking about the 2024 season for the Raiders. Mike, what are your predictions for the season? And I guess, we'll kick it off with maybe a record prediction, and then we'll go into a team MVP and probably a couple breakout players.
Yeah, I mean, record prediction, I kind of probably spoiled it a little bit, kind of reacting to Grant's record prediction. What I meant to say to him was I appreciate his honesty. I wouldn't have blamed him at all. I know myself, if I were on some guy's channel and like he's a big Raider fan and he just asked me like, what are you thinking? Like, I know I'll see a random Raider fan. I'll be wearing a Raider hat at work or something. And, it's like, oh, go Raiders, let's go. And it's like, if we start chatting it up, it's like, oh, man, I think we can make the playoffs this year. Yeah, for sure. But deep down, my feeling is
deep down, you're like, man, I just lied to that man's face.
Well, I mean, if I had to give a prediction, I'm probably sitting at like right around 500. It's probably 8-9 or 9-8. But I could see a really bad scenario where it's like something for some reason the rate. I don't know if it's like everybody's talking about, oh, are the Raiders going to trade Devontae? What if they do? Right. And then, maybe they start like around 500, but the quarterback play is just horrendous. He demands a trade. They trade him. And then it goes from around 500 to around 250. Right. And they're winning a quarter of their games. Then we have a problem, obviously. But, and I can also see the scenario where they're just this tough, play hard for their coach football team. And the quarterback is just playing point guard, just getting it to the players and, being a field general or whatever you want to call them. And they get it done, whoever the quarterback is. And they win 10 games and they squeak their way into the playoffs as the 7th seed. Like, to me, I think the 7th, maybe the 6th seed is the best case scenario for this current team with this current quarterback situation, this current offensive line, this current running game, and so forth. It's really, I know it's not exactly, but it really is year one of Antonio Pierce's tenure as the coach, as well as Tom Telesco's tenure at GM. And usually it takes a couple years to get it really in gear. Some teams just luck out where they have a solid roster and the coach comes in. The Houston Texans, right, with DeMeco Ryans, he got put into the perfect scenario. He built up the defense because he's a defensive-minded coach, right? But he was in position, 2nd overall pick, got the quarterback, and got the right one, right? I wish that the Raiders could be in that position, but we know what it takes to get there, right? We've talked about that multiple times in this show.
Take your medicine.
Take your medicine. And, I mean, there's a dark part of me that's sitting here with all this bad vibes and this quarterback room where there's a part of me that's like, they probably should take their medicine and just, I'm not saying they should tank, but at some point they got to get their quarterback. And if it's not going to be Dak, which bear in mind, like, all right, the Raiders come out of this season, whatever it is, 7 wins, 10 wins, 5 wins, whatever it is, if they come out of this going, wow, I really hope we get Dak in free agency, there are multiple aspects as to why that could not happen. And as far as a free agent quarterback, Dak is one of one. We're not going to be the only competitors trying to be his suitor in free agency, right? There's going to be a market for him, and it's going to be driven up by the competition to where we talked about Purdy getting paid. Dak might be looking at 60 plus 65 million next offseason per year. Are the Raiders really in the right position to do that? Whereas you can just, as we said, take your medicine, get a top 5 draft pick, and hopefully there's a good quarterback there. I haven't looked too much into quarterbacks in next year's draft. I've heard it's not that good, but just something I thought about because I've seen like mock drafts, like way too early mock drafts on Twitter and stuff. And I think the top quarterback right now, like as far as projections, like you hear a lot about Deion Sanders' son, whose first name for some reason I'm totally forgetting right now. Shadur Sanders from Colorado. But I think like the current projected top quarterback might be Carson Beck from Georgia. And what's interesting about that to me is we just drafted Georgia's star tight end, Brock Bowers. So I wonder if that might be somewhere the Raiders might like to go next year. But it's not like you can just pre-plan for that unless you tank. But teams don't actually tank. Good.
You know what's the problem though? So, we've talked about, the Raiders just sometimes they need to take their medicine. They need to lose these games in order to get that quarterback. Right now, the Raiders are not in a position to where they are able to tank. Unless you're a Raider fan and you don't necessarily care about Antonio Pierce, or you think that, Mark Davis can hire somebody else to do it. But if you like Antonio Pierce as a Raider fan, I don't think that he can afford to tank, because if he landed the first overall pick, I'm not confident that Mark Davis would be willing to give Antonio Pierce a whole nother season to, like prove that he is an NFL head coach.
You know what that would remind me of is like a Romeo Crennel or Lovie Smith with the Texans.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was with the Texans. Like there have been a select few coaches where they get the job for 1 year, their team sucks, and then they get let go for like a bigger name coach, and their team is better positioned, to in the draft and whatnot, and
Yeah.
they might have a lot of money in free agency. I can see that. I really can, and it's unfortunate because, coming out of last season, I was all in on Pierce, but vibes are vibes, and right now my vibes are low, and it's like, well, if that happened next off season, at the end of the day, for me, it's just what is best for the team. As much as I like Antonio Pierce, not only for this franchise, but just as a coach, as a person, and his embodiment of this franchise, if he's not the best thing for this franchise, I will have no problem with him getting let go next year. But in a perfect world, he doesn't get let go because he just continues to show the players play hard for him, and whatever they do, I mean, maybe they trade up in the draft next year. I have no idea. Maybe they do win 10 games and they trade up, they get that quarterback, they keep a Aiden O'Connell to start until that quarterback's ready, and suddenly it's like, man, this team is positioned where in a season, so not 25, but 2026, they look legit. But it's going to take at least that much time to get there if they don't have the quarterback right now. And again, that goes into the vibes. So to answer the question at hand of record prediction, I think my realistic record prediction is 8-9. I think that's my realistic prediction. But again, like ceiling 10 games, floor 5. I think the Las Vegas betting is like 6.5 wins over under. So maybe 6, not 5, but 6. Yeah.
Real quick, I have the spreadsheet, pulled up where we did predictions, for the Raiders
Last year?
schedule. No, we did this when the schedule came out.
Yeah,
so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to read off what our floors, what our predictions, and what our ceilings are. And then we can give like a little quick update and we can just kind of document it. But in May 16th, your floor was 7 wins and your ceiling was 12 wins, but your prediction was 11-6. And I think maybe you went, I have something in parentheses, a little bit more realistically, 9-8.
Oh, okay.
Cool. I think we're both probably going to switch that, because I also have like a 9-8 in parentheses. My floor was 6 wins. My ceiling was 12 wins, and my prediction was 10-7 with 9-8 in parentheses. I think we talked about it after the show and probably said, yeah, I'm not feeling as confident about that.
Yeah, that again, if they're gonna get to double-digit wins. They have to be they have to be a hard-fought team week in and week out. They also need to keep it consistent. And my problem with this quarterback situation is I just can't envision them being consistent with Gardner Minshew as the starting quarterback. So,
So what would you say is the floor for this team?
I'll say 6 wins.
You think that's
I think Yeah, I think regardless, they're going to be a hard-fought team. I don't see Antonio Pierce losing the locker room. If anything, like I mentioned on the last pod, the one issue I have with him right now is that he came out before the draft and said, or even for agency, and said, we can't have a band-aid quarterback. We can't have a situation where we're just, stuck with this guy for a year or something, and, we don't have a long-term fix at the position. He said that, and then the Raiders proceeded to come out and put a Band-Aid at quarterback in Gardner Minshew, and obviously Aiden O'Connell was his backup. That's the definition of like a Band-Aid quarterback, of like, he's not going to suddenly become Kenny Stabler. He's just going to be, a Jameis Winston, like a guy who should be a backup. He's just a high-end backup. But that doesn't mean because he's a high-end backup, he's going to win games a lot. He's going to be inconsistent. That's my one issue, is just that he acknowledges, the head coach, we can't have like a short-term fix at quarterback. We have to have a long-term fix in place. And the team, a.k.a. Tom Telesco, proceeded to not get a long-term fix this offseason. But what I was getting to was, I don't see Antonio Pierce losing the locker room. I can see the quarterback situation losing at least one certain player, which would be Davante Adams. And if Davante Adams were to become vocal in, I want to get the hell out of here, that is when you could start losing the team. But I don't think it'll be Antonio Pierce's fault. I think in a way, that's a Tom Telesco thing. And I wouldn't exactly fault Telesco. Like, Grant Cohn was talking about, like, what's the plan here at quarterback? I've heard a lot of people, suspect, like, maybe Michael Penix was the plan. Like, if they had good intel or whatever, that we think Bo Nix is the Broncos guy, and it sure turns out that it was. And Sean Payton's been running his mouth about, like, oh, we tricked this team and we tricked this team into not trading up for Bo Nix. Shut up, okay? The Vikings, I think their guy was McCarthy. But nobody expected the Falcons to go for Penix. Were the Raiders sitting there like, that's going to be our guy? And then he gets sniped. And then it's like, I guess we're going top player available. Like, that's cool. I appreciate it. But now there's no plan. And it was too late, because obviously the draft is after free agency, right? So they got the Band-Aid quarterback in Gardner Minshew. But they might have hoped to have gotten a certain guy in the first round. And I know there was a lot of talk. I'm not trying to ramble, but I know there was a lot of talk about them trying to trade up to number 2, because I think their guy really was Jaden Daniels, because of the connection with Antonio Pierce and just for how good of a quarterback I think he really is going to be. But that was just unrealistic, because the number 2 team, Washington, they weren't going to leave that. Like, they're in that position. They took the medicine. That's when you need to take their quarterbacks. They did. Patriots at 3, they took their quarterback because they're in the position to do it. The Raiders either need to be in that position, trade up to do so, but it takes 2 to tango there, or you sign a guy for way too much money. So,
yeah. Joel says, I don't see us losing enough games to pick high. We are going to have to trade up in the draft, to draft a quarterback or pay Dak. It's funny how Dak is just linked to the Raiders, because I think we can all predict, I don't think Jerry Jones is going to give Dak a max extension. He could, but I feel like, the reason why he hasn't so far is because they were maybe anticipating they could get something from Trey Lance to see if he could develop into their long-term guy, because that's what he spoke about last year when they traded for him. Right. So right now, Jerry Jones just broke the bank for CeeDee Lamb. Do you anticipate that that Dak is going to get extended there, or you think his asking price is going to be too much and he'll have to test free agency?
Well, I think coming out of the preseason game with the Niners and Raiders game, I remember when Purdy got intercepted, when he targeted Deebo Samuel, Sam Webb deflects the pass, Chris Smith intercepts it. The big talk was like, man, Deebo cannot separate. And I know I'm a little off topic right now, but I'll get there. The reaction was, man, Ayuk's probably sitting there like, see, this is why you need me, right? So I think in relation to Dak, Trey Lance had a good game against the Raiders and then proceeded the following week to have a 5-interception game. Okay.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to take a shit on the dude, but that's reason enough. Like if the Cowboys were serious, and I can at least admit, like, hey, doing a 4th-round flyer on Trey Lance of like, hey, if he could become a guy, it's worth it. Absolutely. But now you've had 2 seasons of training camp with him, or at least preseason with him, and he, his finale in this preseason is a 5-interception game where he got the entire game against second and third stringers. 5 interceptions. Dak Prescott is probably sitting there going, thank God. Thank God. If they really were serious about that, of like, yeah, Lance could be our backup plan. I think he could be a great backup. There's no chance in hell that the Cowboys come out of this and want to be taken seriously. If they let Dak walk, don't draft a quarterback and go, well, it's either Cooper Rush or Trey Lance, they would be in the exact same situation as the Raiders right now. And they would be the fucking joke of the NFL, because that's what it currently is for the Raiders.
Well, I think the difference is, and this is just my opinion, feel free to disagree. I think Trey Lance has shown flashes of where he can be a dynamic starter in the NFL. He just has not been able to consistently put it together. And, this will be the last thing that I say. Those 4 out of those 5 interceptions were all on him. They were horrible. They were really bad. There was one that got ripped out of the receiver's hands, that maybe you can maybe kind of put the blame, but it wasn't the worst interception that I've seen. But he threw 49 passes in that game. So I mean, I can't defend 5 interceptions, but at least it wasn't like 5 interceptions out of 20 throws,
Right.
At least it was like nearly 50 throws, and like, yeah, that's still 10%. It's bad, right?
Yeah.
Like one interception practically for every 10 throws is bad.
Yeah.
But
I think the positive to take from that is simply the Cowboys giving him his snaps.
Yeah.
I really think that's the positive. And them getting as much of a look at him as possible.
I don't think it was enough for Jerry Jones, I think, to say, you know what, we're ready to move on from Dak right now and give the team over to Trey. I don't think so. So, Dak being linked to the Raiders, I mean, it's all up to Jerry Jones if he's going to let Dak go, but I could 100% see him as a Raider.
Yeah. I'll even add, like, I think the 5-interception performance doesn't automatically mean like the Cowboys should just like, whatever, we'll let Trey walk in free agency if he's a free agent after this season. Like, I still think he's a fine backup for them, and they can keep trying to, build him. It's just like, I would say the negative with the Cowboys looking at Dak here is like, all right, I think he's like 35. Maybe he's 32, but he's like in the 30s. He might be 33. I think he's 33. If you can confirm that right now for me.
He's 31.
Oh, he's 30. All right, well. All right, then he's fine. He's fine. I don't know why I thought he was like 33. He doesn't look it, so that makes sense. Well, shoot that in the foot right there. Anyways.
Yeah. Unsubscribe from the channel. Show's over. Mike didn't have his facts.
I'm probably thinking of some other quarterback. I don't know. Point being, what I was all.
Here's the thing. He's been starting for a very long time, because like he was playing at the same time as Tony Romo, and Tony Romo is long retired. He's an announcer, got a huge contract announcing. Like the whole, like, I guess, timing of the NFL is kind of crazy. Like, Dak and Ezekiel Elliott, I want to say, were rookies at the same time, and Ezekiel Elliott is like a washed running back now.
Yeah.
But running backs age a lot quicker.
Yes, yes. And a 31-year-old quarterback, in the exact opposite way of what I was going to say, a 31-year-old quarterback, if he's at the top of his game, which Dak is right now, that's perfectly fine to give a 4-year deal. It's just if he was 33, I could see the Cowboys being like, should we invest 4 years into that? You know? But long story short, Dak is one of one as far as a potential free agent next year. If the Raiders are looking to go, if they go 10 wins, right? And it's like, oh, we should go for the free agent quarterback. It's like, well, if Dak gets re-signed or signs to another team, you're shit out of luck again. And then it's like, well, we have to trade up. And again, it takes two to tango. So if the second overall pick is just like, no, hell no, we want our guy here, then you are back in the same scenario as what we just went through this offseason.
I know we talked about it on the phone and we haven't mentioned it on the podcast, but if the Jaguars, I mean, have they decided whether or not they're going to pick up Mac Jones's 5th-year option? Because if they're not, Mac Jones might be a free agent, and he completed like 70% of his passes this preseason, or at least he did up to through the first 2 games. I'm not saying Mac Jones is the answer, but like in terms of first round reclamation projects,
Yeah, I guess the whole point to all of this is like, if we're not going to get a Dak or draft a quarterback, no matter what, I'm going to feel like we're in the same position as we are right now. Like, I guess last week when I was talking about Mac Jones, my thought process was, well, we're kind of stuck here. It's not like we're just going to magically get a young quarterback on our team unless you could trade for Trey Lance. But even then, it's not like I expect him within 3 weeks to become a top 10 quarterback. No, at best for him, it's going to take 3 years at this point. But regardless, I would want a Mac Jones right now to figure out, all right, who's the best guy? Who do we keep? But no matter what, like, again, I don't see anybody like that becoming the next. Who's a former Kurt Warner, of like off the street star quarterback? It just doesn't happen anymore. Very rare. Brock Purdy would be the most recent one.
Yeah,
of
I
like
was like
7th round guy, but that might have been no discredit to Purdy. He makes insane plays, but that could also be a situational thing of like Shanahan, the top heavy roster, and so forth. And also quarterbacks getting injured and him getting an opportunity alone, right? But point being, the Raiders need to figure out the quarterback in the long term, not in the short term. I'm tired of short term things. The whole point of getting off of Derek Carr was we need to find a new long term quarterback, and they still need to do that. But moving off of, I would say, record predictions, what do you think we should go into?
Real quick, so what would you say is the new ceiling? Or do you want to keep the ceiling, and do you want to change your prediction for the record?
Oh, I mean, I would say my prediction. It's so hard because I feel like this is the optimistic side of it. Is like, this team is definitely better than last season, like bar none. That's the weird thing, is like, I'm trying to be realistic, and it's like our quarterback situation is so bad, at least from what I'm seeing, that it probably will hold us back. But then again, it also, like, it was no different, if not worse, last season, and they were in the playoff hunt at the end, coming off of starting like 4-6, or maybe like 3-5 or something like that with Josh McDaniels.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they were 3 games under, and then Antonio Pierce brought them up to like almost 500. Maybe they were 2 games under, whatever they were, right? But again, if the team can play hard for them like that, and you get the whole offseason, new offensive coordinator, hopefully it's a little bit more efficient and interesting, and you have a new weapon in Brock Bowers, not Brock Purdy, and maybe it is better. My ceiling. Okay, for a final answer here, my ceiling is 10 wins.
10 wins?
10 wins. My genuine prediction Oh man, that's so hard. It's between 8 and 9. Can I just say 8 to 9 wins? Like 8.5. I'll just say 8.5 wins. That's my prediction. Like right at 500.
Okay.
And then my floor is 6 wins.
Okay. I'm going to go ahead and say my floor is going to be 5 wins. I'm going to change my ceiling. I'm going to change my ceiling a little bit to like narrow the gap. I had it at 12-5 back in May. I'm going to say 11 wins is the ceiling. So that would put them at 11-6, probably making the playoffs. In terms of my prediction, my new prediction, I'm going to put them at 8-9.
Yep.
Just because I can see them like winning. They have a bunch of winnable games. They've got the Broncos twice. You never know what the Chargers are going to be late in the season. I have an opinion about week 1, but we'll save that for the next show. The Ravens are going to be tough. The Panthers, that's a very winnable game. Browns is going to be tough because of that defense. Steelers, that's a winnable game because that offense isn't that great. Rams is going to be tough. Chiefs, the Raiders seem to match up well with the Chiefs, but I think that's pretty tough regardless of matchup. Gardner Minshew on the Raiders beating the Chiefs. I don't know. We'll have to see how that plays out. Bengals going to be tough. Dolphins going to be tough. Buccaneers, it's a winnable game. Might be a little bit tough. Falcons should be tougher than what we thought. But then again, we don't know about Kirk Cousins' injury, and that's week 15, so we'll see. Jaguars, we don't know exactly what they're going to be. Could be a winnable game, or they could be much better than last year. Saints should be a very winnable game. So I'm going to go ahead. I lowered the floor and the ceiling a little bit, and my prediction is 8-9.
Cool. Yeah, no, that's all fair. I'm having a hard time between my genuine prediction of 8 to 9 wins, so I just went right in the middle, and then the ceiling of 10 to 11 wins. I'm having a hard time of but I'm just keep it at 10.
Mm-hmm. Really quickly, Papa J brings up a good point that I didn't even think of. Bo Nix is going to be the starting quarterback, so there will be a little bit of a difference, than last year at least.
Yeah. I think they should be better just by natural progression under a coach in a second year with them.
Mm-hmm. And Joel is, talking about your point. You said the reason to move off of Derek Carr was to get the long-term guy, and you guys have had 5 quarterbacks start, for the Raiders since Carr.
Yeah,
Carr was not the answer though. I hold true to that, but the whole, like you said, the whole reason to move on was to move on, not to recycle
go back into purgatory for 10 years. No. Yeah.
So
one thing I saw a post. I want to say it's the 33rd team on Twitter. I don't know if you have seen them or follow them, but
yeah.
They post some good stuff, like a lot of good stats and whatnot. But then there was one where it was like maybe a team just cut a quarterback or somebody got injured or something, and it was like, here are 5 quarterbacks that are still available as free agents, and it was like, who's the Titan? Ryan Tannehill, a bunch of older quarterbacks. Could be an interesting one, I forget, and then like the third guy. Why am I forgetting his name? Oh, that's so annoying. I'm so sorry. This is horribly delivered. The guy that started for the Raiders last year, Brian Hoyer. They were like, here are 5 interesting options if a team needs a quarterback. I was like, I quote tweeted, I was like, I can confirm Brian Hoyer is not an interesting option for any fucking team. Jesus Christ. The fact that he was one of those 5 guys is just, that was Josh McDaniels to a T. Okay.
Yeah. I don't know who would have ever thought that Brian Hoyer would ever be a Pro Bowler, ever.
Mm-hmm.
Don't look at my Twitter and don't look up Brian Hoyer.
Yeah.
For those of you who don't know, Brian Hoyer used to be the quarterback of the 49ers back in 2017 in Shanahan's first year. And I went to an open practice, and Brian Hoyer balled out in the open practice. And I tweeted the worst tweet of all time. I said something about, I think Brian Hoyer is going to be a Pro Bowl quarterback this year. Or I said, don't be surprised if Brian Hoyer is a Pro Bowl quarterback. And I think he proceeded to win 0 games for the team. And CJ Beathard won the first game against the Giants. I was there. That was the Marquise Goodwin, long touchdown after, unfortunately his wife had a miscarriage in the morning, and Marquise Goodwin went down to his knees and was praying. So, just to give good context, And Papa J says, I wasn't the only one that thought that Brian Hoyer was going to be good. I do remember that offseason. It was like, all right, the 49ers have like 2 options here. They can either get Brian Hoyer or Jay Cutler. And I'm like, oh, I want Jay Cutler. And then we got Brian Hoyer. Well, yeah, I always wanted Brian Hoyer. He's a better quarterback anyway. No.
Yeah.
But
that's how I felt with Gardner Minshew this year. It was like, well, we could get Gardner Minshew, or I already forget who the top free agent quarterback was. I guess Kirk Cousins. And then we got Gardner Minshew. And I didn't kind of trick myself into liking it. I was just like, all right, well, there's your emergency quarterback, I guess. Like, I'm looking forward to the draft. So
Joel says, we need our defense to live up to the tail end of last year, in which they didn't look good in the preseason.
Yep. And to the previous comments point about Bo Nix, I feel like Bo Nix could be a guy that could do what Trey Lance did to the defense in week 2 of the preseason, where it's just dink and dunk, efficient. The defense is just playing nice, soft coverage. Like, all right, fine, we'll let you do it. You're just not going to kill us. And then suddenly they're going to be in the red zone, and we're going to be sitting there watching the game going, what the fuck is happening? This is so annoying. It's going to suck. It's going to happen. It's going to suck.
Mm-hmm.
But to your point, I think the defense still will be good. Like, I've chilled on the worry. I just think there's going to be games. I don't know. It's the I have that bad Raiders, It's always the Raiders. Like, this is how the Raiders are. The defense always sucks. Like, I hope they can keep it consistent and stay good. That'd be reason enough to keep Pierce, but we'll see.
Mm-hmm. So, really quickly, I want you to name maybe a player or 2 that you have as breakout candidates, or, list off a couple if you have a couple.
Yeah. I think unless you have any other ideas, I would say we just go breakouts, MVP, and then we can move on to the Niners. I don't know if there were any other options. All right, cool. So I'll give maybe I'll give 2 breakouts. The first one is kind of like the given one. It's Brock Bowers. I mean, he's new to the team. He's a first-round rookie. The dude's going to be explosive. I'm so excited to see him week 1 and 2 and 3 and so forth. I actually just had a dynasty rookie draft this past weekend, and I was the reigning champion in that league. It was the first year in existence.
Not in the league that I'm in.
No, that's not a dynasty league. That is a redraft. But in this dynasty league, I had the 12th pick out of 12 players. And somehow, some way, Brock Bowers fell to 12, even though he was like the 6th ranked player. So I was hoping for a wide receiver, but I took Bowers in an instant, and I'm excited about it. But my other breakout player, this would be my genuine, if you had to ask me, give me one player who is the breakout guy this year, it's Trevon Merrick, free safety on the defense. I think not only from what I saw in the preseason, but also the fact that he's on a contract year. He needs to prove himself to get that money. He's literally going to be playing for his life. And from what I saw in the preseason, it's going to be real nice to watch. He is all over the field. He was getting all the tackles. he hasn't been like that ball hawking safety. And maybe it was just the quarterbacks being that bad in training camp. But Trevon Merrick, I saw multiple times from reporters at training camp saying, "Oh, another interception for Trevon Merrick." It was between Merrick and Jack Jones. They were getting all of the interceptions, all of them. So I don't know. I think Trevon Merrick is going to break out. I really hope he's a Pro Bowler this year, and I hope he puts himself on the map not only for Raider fans but for the NFL. And I hope the Raiders keep him.
Mhm.
So
My breakout player, I've really got two of them. I've really got two breakout players for the Raiders, and my breakout players are. I think the obvious answer, you already named him, is Brock Bowers. I think like I've heard nothing about him being a red zone target, like a favorite target in the red zone for the Raiders in training camp. And I think like also he's in a position where, I would say like no disrespect to Gardner Minshew or to Aiden O'Connell, but like I'd say quarterbacks who are struggling a little bit tend to favor tight ends as like a safety blanket, because I'd say tight ends probably run a little bit more of a simple route tree than wide receivers do. Like wide receivers are able to be more agile and run a little bit more dynamic routes, more complex routes. And then tight ends, it's like, it's pretty limited, and sometimes they can go under the radar. I think Brock Bowers will probably be used a little bit, more than just lined up at tight end, but I've heard nothing but great things about him and how he's one of the greatest tight end prospects that we've seen. I know him and Kyle Pitts were up there, so like, I'd say Brock Bowers' floor is like what we've seen out of Kyle Pitts, from the past couple of years. Like the talent is there. It's just whether or not the usage is going to be there, and if the quarterback can keep up.
I think the usage in the sense of being like, positioned in different places, the usage will be there in that sense, like you said, of like, he's not only going to be a tight end in line, he'll be in the slot, he'll be out wide. They had him at fullback. They might hand off the ball to him a couple times because he can do it. It's just a matter of, is there too many, mouths to feed in this offense right now with Devontae Adams, who will probably garner 30% of the target share, get like at least 140 targets or so. He should catch around 100 passes again if everything's right. But then Jacoby Myers is a very worthy wide receiver too. I think he could be a wide receiver 1 on some teams. And now Trey Tucker is showing out in the preseason. He should be the slot receiver. He might take targets from Brock Bowers. It might be a give and take there. So, and Michael Mayer. So, a lot of mouths to feed.
Then I can 100% like see it with the Raiders that at the end of the season, it is going to be, oh yeah, well, we just need to build this offense around Brock Bowers. Brock Bowers has showed that, he can carry the offense on his back. He's a dynamic weapon. We just need a guy who can give it to him. I can see it now. I'm seeing the future.
I'm already mentally there. I'm already there to where all this Devontae Adams talk, I'm like, well, if they don't trade him week 7 or whenever the trade deadline is, I can see him being traded next offseason because his contract suddenly has no guarantees and he demands a new contract. And they're in this situation where it's like, well, we're looking for a quarterback and blah, 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 blah. We need to acquire picks. He's the perfect candidate to get traded. And then you have Brock Bowers and Jacoby Myers. You can get it done with that. I can totally see Brock Bowers being the guy starting next season. Continue.
Mm-hmm. Starting this season?
2025.
Okay.
As long as Devontae's there, he's number 1.
My other breakout player is going to be Zamir White, because I think that Zamir White, I think he's a pretty talented running back, maybe not to the level of Josh Jacobs, but this strikes me as a team that is going to want to run the ball. They drafted Jackson Powers Johnson, so they at least invested a little bit into the offensive line. I don't know. This to me kind of screams a little bit of a smash mouth football team. They'll try to They will just try to control the time of possession, win the game on the ground, and throw when they need to. And, if everything goes right, Devontae Adams will be open. If you run the ball successfully, Devontae Adams already creates separation when they know it's going to go to him. So I don't know. I can see Zamir White being a breakout player. Maybe not to the level of Josh Jacobs 2 years ago, but you never know.
Yeah, he won't be leading the league, but he could be 1,000-yard rusher, get around maybe 10 touchdowns. Who knows?
Yeah.
I do agree they're going to want to run the ball. So, in fact, that was something that Luke Getsy is very well known for. It's actually two things: it's running the ball as much as possible and targeting tight ends. So, but now we can move on to our MVP picks.
Yes. So let's talk about our team MVP picks. Mike, I will let you go first.
Okay.
So this is just for the Raiders. Just so if anybody's watching and not seeing the screen, Raiders 2024 team MVP.
Yeah. I mean, obviously the obvious answer is Max Crosby, and I'm not gonna say that just because that's less interesting. But I'll give some options before I give my guy. Obviously, Max Crosby. Right next to him, Christian Wilkins. I think Malcolm Kuntz is a solid option for like their team MVP, where maybe because Crosby and Wilkins are getting doubled, Malcolm Kuntz is just the cleanup guy, and he's the guy that gets 12 sacks, maybe more, maybe 16 sacks. I could see it. And then he's a guy that earns the big contract coming out of the season. Nate Hobbs. Colton Miller, if he stays healthy, keeping the quarterback on his feet, I'll put his name in there, right? And then there's Devontae Adams. And I would say the last name that I'll throw in there is Jack Jones, just because I didn't get to really say him as a breakout. I think he broke out last year.
Yeah. Did you know he's a 74 on Madden?
He's let it be known, that's for sure. And I would say, yeah, he should be like at least an 84. I mean, from what I've seen, but it's a small amount. So
Joel says Trevon Merrick.
It's funny. Like I said all those names, and I'm looking at the roster and the starters. I'll even give a little nod to Robert Spillane as an option too. But my heart does want to go to Trevon Merrick. I really think he might just kill it on the defense. But I lied earlier. It's Max Crosby. Let's be honest. I mean, this team lives and dies, I think, by Max Crosby. If God forbid, knock on the hardest wood that you have, he were
Pause.
Yes. If he were to, whatever happened to him and he can't play, this team is, if it were week 1, it's below the floor. It's not 6 wins. We're looking at like, oh, we might get our quarterback of the future now. I think it's that serious. So,
yeah, I'm with you with the only pick that I have is Max Crosby. I think he is the most valuable player on the team because, Grant was just on with us and admitted to 49er fans everywhere that Max Crosby is better than Nick Bosa. So, you and I have had that discussion or that debate for a couple years now. And it's not even like, I don't even think I can really refute it. Like, Max Crosby is a badass, and he has developed into this, like, he is a relentless pass rusher, and he's so quick. Like, while I do love the skill set that Nick Bosa has, Max Crosby, I feel like closes the gap between him and the quarterback a lot quicker than Nick Bosa does. Like, if you watch both of them side by side, like they're kind of different players. They're both pass rush specialists, but I think Crosby might be a little bit better against the run. But I feel like if you were to look at both of them, Bosa might be maybe probably a little bit more powerful, but Crosby I think is a little bit quicker. I think Bosa kind of looks like in slow motion if you were to like just thinking about it in my mind, like the two side by side, I think Crosby's that quick.
Yeah.
But
And
like
he
you
has like
said,
that relentlessness to him too.
well, I think
Just
both of them.
nonstop.
I think
For sure.
both
For
are
sure.
excellent players.
Yeah.
But what I will say is, for Nick Bosa, I mean for Max Crosby, if Crosby were to go down, the Raiders are going down. And more, more, I guess, emphasis, Max Crosby is the Raiders defense. He is.
Yep. Yeah.
Without him,
he's yeah.
it's going to fall apart. So he's the team MVP in my opinion.
Yeah. 1000%.
Joel says Max Defensive Player of the Year. My only issue with that, it's not that he wouldn't be deserving of a Defensive Player of the Year. Like, if you stuck Max Crosby on the Chiefs, on the Bengals, on the Ravens, on the 49ers, he would have won one already, I think. The reason why he hasn't gotten the recognition of like NFL honors is because he's on a team that hasn't been very successful, with the Raiders.
Yeah, I think if he were to win Defensive Player of the Year, I think he would have to go down a path very similar to Khalil Mack, which would be miraculous season. Holy shit, they made the playoffs in large part because of this guy. And in 2016, that was Khalil Mack. It was like, this guy is unstoppable. Every time it's fourth down and the game's on the line, he makes the play, all those things, But at the end of the day, the Raiders made the playoffs that year. And I think the Defensive Player of the Year award kind of showed for that, for Khalil Mack, So if they made the playoffs this year, oh, yeah, he's in the running. It's just at that point, what are his stats, right? So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I just want to quickly clarify, I love Nick Bosa, okay? I think, he's a tremendous player and, deserved that contract. And I think he deserved the Defensive Player of the Year. But when comparing two different players, if you asked me to pick one, I think I see Crosby making a bigger impact on his team than I see Nick Bosa making an impact on his team. And I think that could also be a product of how good the 49ers other defenders are, as opposed to Crosby is the diamond in the rough there, or has been the diamond in the rough consistently. Mike, are we ready to move on, back to the 49ers?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Let's talk about the 49ers 2024 season. So back in May, our predictions for the 49ers were, I had the floor at 10-7. My prediction was 14-3, and my ceiling was 15-2. Your floor was 11-6. Your prediction was 13-4, and your ceiling was 15-2.
Wow. So wait, my floor was higher than yours?
Yes.
Oh man. I like you said yours first, and I was like, oh man, I think that might go down a little bit. Then I heard mine, I was like, oh. So
yeah. So, question: how are you feeling about that record prediction?
Okay, my record prediction was 13-3.
13-4.
Oh, 13. Sorry, yes. Yeah, I would say pretty much everything except for the ceiling goes down a little bit. I think the ceiling is still there. If they got Ayuk and Trent Williams in within the next week and a half, the ceiling is perfectly fine if they stay healthy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because I think it's weird, like the whole Super Bowl hangover thing. It's like, man, it's a thing, But at the same time, I feel like coming off a Super Bowl loss, it sucks because it's like, oh, Shanahan, this is all that ever happened. He blows the lead every time, blah, blah, blah. I could see some people coming out of that with this ominous, depressed feeling of it'll never happen, But I feel like the players have a different mentality than say the fans of for the fans, it's like, No, I can't see it with Shanahan anymore. And I can't blame anybody for thinking that. For the players, it's like, we're still just as good. We're going to do it. And that's what it kind of has to be. And I like, not to disagree with anybody earlier. It's just, I would imagine Fred Warner, a Nick Bosa, a Brock Purdy, a Debo Samuel, anybody that's on the field right now, like, I could see how the spirits are low or whatever. It's probably because there's a lot of distraction with Trent Williams and especially Ayuk right now, and that just getting the media spotlight, right? I can see all of that and like, oh, McCaffrey's hurt. But again, if everybody's healthy and everybody's there, they're still a great team, in my opinion. So again, the ceiling stays, which was what, 14 is what I had?
No, 15.
15?
2.
Oh, 15-2. Oh, brother. No, it's going down to 14.
Okay.
Ceiling would be 14 wins. Floor, I will say the Niners floor. I mean, okay. Are we assuming full health here with our predictions?
I'd say you kind of have to, but like, let's
Yeah.
just say they lose a guy here or there.
Yeah, I mean, that's the tough part is like, okay, the floor could be without Ayuk and Williams, or the floor could be without Purdy, say, knock on wood, right? Something happens. Or McCaffrey, right? Well, now the floor is way lower. But I'll just say my realistic floor of like, at worst, Ayuk and Trent Williams miss a game or two. My floor is 9 wins.
Mm-hmm.
What was it last time?
11 wins. So
yeah,
now you're
comfortable. I'm comfortable with 9 as my floor.
Comfortable with 9-11. Good job, Michael.
That's a negative. And then my genuine Niners season win-loss prediction would be 11 wins, right in the middle. I mean, it's pretty simple. It's dumb, but I guess a part of me probably wants to say 12, but my ceiling is 13?
Your ceiling is now 14.
14. You know what? It's tough. All right, for the Raiders, I said 8.5 wins. Yes. I took the easy road and I went right in the middle. I'll do the same thing here. 11.5. That's my
11.5 for your prediction.
11.5, aka I'm probably leaning 11, but 12. I mean, if at full capacity, full health, 12 wins is so attainable for this team. It's not even funny. Mm-hmm. So I'll say 11.5.
Okay, so let me go ahead and jump in real quick. Do you want to keep the ceiling at 14? 14 wins?
Yeah, I'll keep it there.
Okay. So back in May, I just want to repeat. The floor was 10-7, prediction 14-3, ceiling 15-2. The further and further that we've got into the offseason, I sort of feel like, man, this is giving me Super Bowl hangover vibes. I don't know what it is, but this team is just too talented, I think, at full health to lose that many games. So my prediction is 11-6 because I still think that they'll be good and they'll be in the mix. And I want to say that was even Grant's prediction as well, like an 11-win team, make it kind of far in the playoffs. And he predicted that they would not win the Super Bowl. I haven't thought about whether or not they're going to win the Super Bowl, but all the vibes that I have been getting, like, even if you are the most diehard 49er fan, I don't know how you can like be comfortable with like, oh, they're in limbo with 2 of their star players. They don't know if they'll have Trent Williams or when they'll have him, and they don't know if they're going to have Brandon Ayuk at all. And if they don't have Ayuk, what are we going to get in return for him that's going to help us this year? Anything? And then another thing that we haven't even spoken about is, Ricky Pearsall. It just came out, I want to say yesterday, that he has had a shoulder injury, dating back to before when they drafted him. And that's kind of what's been holding him out. And so I'm just like, why would you pick him? You know, you had other guys there. You had Lad McConkey. You could have gone with the secondary, which to their credit, they found Renardo Green, who looks great. I don't know. So it might be another year where we don't get much contribution out of the first round. But, you know, the 49ers have done fine the past several years without that. I'd say my prediction 11-6. My floor now is a losing record. If things go south like 2020, you know, guys miss games, the Niners are already dealing with injuries. I don't think that they would, you know, get that much of bad luck like they got in 2020, but you know, teams just kind of, you know, we've seen Super Bowl hangovers with many teams. They can just be kind of off and not make the playoffs. And so I've got the 49ers, their floor, if things go wrong, at 8-9. Like, let's just say a couple pivotal players go down. And that's a losing record. But in the NFC, that might still make a wild card spot. Not in the AFC, but maybe in the NFC. But, you know, I could just see where it's like, you know, man, how did we drop that game? Or we lost a close one possession game there. And it's just like, you know, the players in the locker room, oh, I'm not too worried. You know, we know with this team that we can pull it together. Like I saw that firsthand with, you know, Jim Harbaugh's last year. Like, you know, I specifically remember the press conference where Frank Gore is like, yeah, this is the most talented team that I've ever been a part of. Of course, we're going to make the playoffs, but they didn't. And they lost, you know, close games, you know, and it's like, that was their last dance. Could this be the 49ers under Kyle Shanahan's last dance? I don't know. Like, I think we will keep most of the core, but I think worst case scenario, they have a losing record, but they're like on the cusp of 500. I think in the worst case scenario. Their ceiling, I'm going to go. I had it at 15-2 last time. I'm going to just bump it down one, because I think if you told me everything went, you know, correct this season, I'm like, okay, so they probably dropped like 3 games. You know, just here and there. They just dropped 3 games. Doesn't matter how it happened. Best case scenario, this team could be the 1 seed in the NFC, and we wouldn't even blink an eye. You know, like last year, we had concerns that the Niners weren't going to be that good with, you know, Purdy coming back with his elbow. You know, I do remember having those concerns, and just, you know, in the preseason, the 49ers didn't do well against the Raiders week 1 of the preseason. And it's like, well, there's no run defense, which ended up being a factor in the season. But they started 5-0 after their struggles in the preseason. But it seemed like the starters were ready to play. And this year, it doesn't seem, you know, everything expressed about the 49ers, and it could just be coverage, and everybody covering the team can be wrong. It just seems like they are exhausted and like maybe still grieving the loss of the Super Bowl, which would point to a Super Bowl hangover. But this team, I still think, with all that talent, no less than 8 wins. I'd be shocked if they went like, you know, I could not imagine a scenario where this team is 4-13 or whatever. You know, there's just no way. There's no way.
At full health, there's no way. But a couple of injuries, and suddenly, you know, that's the same as the year that Garoppolo went down and you guys got Nick Bosa out of it. But again, that was the quarterback going down. I don't mean this to discredit Purdy. I think if Purdy, again, knock on wood, you know, if the worst case scenario for Purdy happens, and he's out, you know, practically this season, I still think if McCaffrey's healthy, you could still win 8-9 games, you know. But hopefully they're healthy, and hopefully they don't have this Super Bowl hangover that, you know, we're kind of like sitting here kind of like feeling the vibe of, hopefully it's not that.
Yeah. No, I agree. If Purdy's healthy, I don't see how they don't win at least 8 or 9 games.
Oh, I said McCaffrey, but the same goes for Purdy. Yes, if like McCaffrey were to get worst case scenarioed, but Purdy's still in, 8 to 9 wins for sure.
Mm-hmm.
So
let's talk about the breakout players in 2024. Yep. Do you want to start this off, or do you want me? I'll just kick off before you steal my guy. My guy for a breakout player is going to be Dominic Pooney. I think I've seen a couple, glimpses in the preseason. I haven't seen anything bad, honestly. I think if he is going to be playing right guard, like I said, I have not seen a bad play out of him so far. I think he's a dog. I'm not saying he's going to be perfect in the regular season, but so far so good. Fingers crossed. I think he could be, exactly what this offensive line needed. And like, do you remember me complaining during the draft? Like, offensive line, what are you doing? Pooney seems like, the sleeper that they were hoping for.
Yep.
And that was a third round player, so not necessarily a sleeper, but he's playing so far at a high level. Yeah. So far so good.
That's good. I won't get back on the Raiders. Did you want to give a second guy, kind of like the same as the Raiders, or?
I'll let you go
breakout?
while I think about it. Because
right.
I was all in on him.
Yeah. Do I even have two guys here? I'll tell you what, I have one guy for sure, and I thought you were going to say him because you said, like, before you steal my guy. For me, it's Jair Brown. And I don't mean this for Niner fans, like, breaking out to them. I think Niner fans know, like, dude, Jair Brown's pretty nice. I think in the same breath as Trevon Merrick, where this season he's going to put himself in the spotlight for the NFL. And I think I can see Trevon Merrick and Jair Brown both making their first Pro Bowls as in their career this season.
Mm-hmm. I got 3 more guys. Can I name them?
Oh, wow. Yeah.
All right. Juwan Jennings, if Brandon Ayuk is not on the team, I could see where Juwan Jennings has to step up. I know they drafted Ricky Pearsall, but we never exactly know. I think Ayuk not being on the field, while he's a different skill set than Juwan Jennings is, I think that he will just naturally see the field a lot more often. So I could see him not necessarily being like a team MVP, but he played his best football, I'd say, in the playoffs last year. You eliminate somebody who's taking a share of the targets, he might see a lot more targets. He's a good player, Juwan Jennings. Another breakout candidate I have is Jordan Mason.
Yep.
Are the 49ers going to do what they did with McCaffrey last year? Probably. Is Elijah Mitchell going to be the next person in line anymore? I don't think so. I think Jordan Mason, I think he's clearly the best, the better running back. It's just a matter of whether he knows all the protections and everything. Because I do know that, like, why am I forgetting the coach's name? I think it's Bobby Turner, the running back coach. He was sort of asked after Jordan Mason talked about the reason why he wasn't seeing the field was because he wasn't taking the study aspect of the game as seriously as they needed him to. So, he's always been a tremendous talent, but it's just like, knowing the protections, which is like half the job at running back. So I could see Jordan Mason, and then my last guy for breakouts could be Renardo Green. And Renardo Green I think he's going to be a starting corner, for the team. And I could see a scenario where Charvarius Ward and Diamador Lenore, both the starting corners right now, are on 1-year deals. I could see a scenario where they do not need to be brought back because Renardo Green shows the 49ers something this year that, he can be solid. Those are my breakout players. Do you have anyone else?
I was going to actually bring up 3 guys, and they're all rookies, and you just named one of them, and Ronaldo Green. I guess my thinking with him was I could see a scenario where they need a third or second corner on any given game or play, and he comes in and just like plays well, and suddenly it's like, yeah, you're our second corner now, or at the very least by the end of the season, right? The other 2 would be what Grant mentioned earlier of like, well, if whatever scenario plays out with the receivers and we need another receiver on the field, if Ricky Pearsall can't get on the field, Jacob Cowing is absolutely a breakout choice. And then my last pick here would be Malik Mustafa or Malik Mustafa, however you say it. But I don't know how often he's going to get on the field. He seems like kind of the perfect box safety, like to bring in on like nickel packages and whatnot, like obvious rushing downs or whatnot. But I think in the preseason he played so well that he definitely deserves to see the field. I don't know. Do you know if he's projected to be the starting safety opposite Jair Brown, or probably not yet?
Well, I think it's still a little unclear on when Hufanga is going to be able to come back. So I think that he or George Odom would probably be starting. Yeah. George Odom has apparently had a pretty good camp, has had a couple interceptions, but I mean, I don't know. It's just a matter of if they're going to be able to entrust a rookie back there.
Yeah.
Because Hufanga was good. Hufanga was good his rookie year, but it was still Jaquiski Tart back there. And then Jair Brown was good, but it was still what's his face? Tayshaun Gibson.
Yeah.
Yeah. So and then Jair Brown, once he finally saw the field, he was solid.
Yeah.
And I thought of other breakout players. So I would say one of them is like I wouldn't necessarily say I'm predicting them to be like a Pro Bowl kind of player, but with this new kickoff rule, I think I called it. Isaac Guerrero is going to be the kickoff returner.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I think he's perfect for, what they need him to do. He's a big body back who can run fast.
4.4 speed. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. No, I mean, that was an interesting pick at the time. I think it just makes too much sense to if they don't feel that they need Elijah Mitchell anymore, you can let him go and keep the younger guys, Jordan Mason being the number 2. And then from what I saw in the Raider game, I don't know if it was just because they wanted to give Guerrero snaps, but they were playing him pretty early on into the game, almost to suggest that maybe he's the third running back, or maybe he's behind Mitchell. Who knows? We'll see in a couple days. And then you have Cody Schrader. And I don't know if you feel like Cody Schrader's worth keeping, but my hunch would be he probably played too well to where if you cut him, he might not land on your practice squad.
Schrader?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think they might try to stash him on the practice squad, but, we'll see. We have to see if, Shanahan is going to want to keep Elijah Mitchell or, just it's going to be McCaffrey, Mason, Guerrero, and Schrader, and if he's going to want to cut ties with Mitchell since he only has 1 year left on his deal and, he's kind of struggled to stay healthy the past couple of years. Well, really, I feel like Mitchell, besides that one season where he was the bell cow, has dealt with injuries. Like every season it feels like. So
yeah.
My last breakout player, or at least the last one that's off the top of my head right now, not saying that he's going to be the best linebacker on the team, but a player that I think is going to shine in absence of Dre Greenlaw, I think will be D. Winters. I think D. Winters, I don't know. He showed glimpses in the preseason. I just have a good feeling about him.
Yeah. And I guess my last breakout guy, not to keep going back and forth on this, but this would probably be more of a breakout to the fans sort of vibe. I don't know if he'd be like a Pro Bowler, but whenever he gets healthy, Leonard Floyd, I could see him being, being solid on this defense opposite Nick Bosa.
I thought he was done, dude. That knee
Yeah.
injury.
Honestly,
Dude,
were you watching the Niners coverage of the game?
yeah. So at first it was on Cron 4, and then I was like,
Yeah.
is there another channel for this? Like, I was like, I don't want to watch it on the Raider channel if I don't have to. No offense.
Yeah, no, and that's perfectly fine. I mean, if you're trying to look out for players on your team, it's not cool to watch it on the other team's network because they're going to be focusing on their players. For example, when his injury happened, they probably cut the camera to like Dylan Lobby and they just started talking about him. I didn't even know he was hurt
No,
until it was like, we're going to cut to a commercial break and it's like, da-da-dun, 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 dun-dun. It's showing him just laying on the ground or whatever. Like, I don't really know exactly. I don't remember exactly how it went, but
bro, I was like, that's an easy MCL right there, dude. Like, it was like he was going to the ground and then another player, like a lineman, landed in his leg on top of his leg at an angle, and he immediately grabbed his knee, and it's like, well, that was short-lived. And then I started, obviously right now I'm thinking about that question that you asked Grant earlier about did Shanahan keep the starters in for too long? That was kind of early into the game, but still it's like keeping your
But still, the fact that they were still in the second quarter against third stringers, I was just like, wow, what is the point here? But anyways, let's move on to the MVPs.
Real quick before we move on to the MVPs, the Numbers is tuning back into the channel, says, salute Nation. 49ers, another game they couldn't win in Allegiant. Raider Nation for life. Well, I mean, double-edged sword. The Nation couldn't beat us either. We're all
that was
winners.
something I meant to mention to Grant was like, at the very beginning and saying like, was that the best preseason game ever? It was just the fact that it ended in a tie, and that never happens. Like, teams purposefully don't try to tie the game, but then at the end, like, the fourth string quarterback for the Raiders, Carter Bradley, had a really nice drive on the Niners, and I was literally sitting there like, this is extremely fun to watch. I think it was Ramel Keaton got like a really sick one-handed catch. They marched down the field, but then it was like third down, 20 seconds left. I think you and I texted about it. It was like interesting choice on like the timing of it and all that, but they opted to kick the field goal, and that caused it to be a tie with like 16 seconds left, and then we had like the crazy Fumblerooski play at the end. It was a fun game, and personally, I had a bet with my uncle who's a Niner fan, to where whoever's team lost the game would have to buy a 6-pack of beer for the other person. So now I don't know what the hell we're doing. You can't buy a 3-pack. So I'll have to talk to him.
Are you guys both? Well, you could. Well, all right. I was just thinking, like, I've seen at Safeway they have like the tall beers where it's like
I was gonna say
two for $8, and like you get
we
those.
should both buy tall boys for each other. Yeah. I was literally gonna say that.
I mean, you guys could both buy 6-packs and like not drive home. One you just stay over, or he stays over.
Yeah, no, I would definitely be up at his house. So we'll see. Yeah, we'll figure it out when I see him. But
yeah,
I mean,
feel free to drink all those beers before we draft on Saturday.
Absolutely not. I will be enjoying those beers the following weekend when I go up to my uncle's house.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, whatever, loser. 49ers 2024 team MVP. Mike, do you want to start off?
I might as well start off. You're the Niner fan, so I think your opinion probably matters a little more, for lack of a better term. MVP, I could go a lot of directions here. I would say, like, to shortlist it for myself, I think last season I said Trent Williams. I want to say. Obviously, Christian McCaffrey's a great choice. Brock Purdy is kind of the obvious because he's a quarterback, right? I mean, currently with everything going on, Brandon Ayuk is kind of an interesting way to take this. The MVP is Kyle Shanahan. No. I'll say, well, two other guys. Fred Warner would be a great option.
The MVP
And
is
Nick
Sourdough
Bosa.
Sam.
Yeah. It's the Gold Rush girls. It's all of them.
Hey, you said it, not me.
Yeah. But Nick Bosa, and then I'd say the dark horse candidate for me would be like Charvarius Ward. I already chose Jerry Brown as my breakout. I think the MVP. This is year 3 for Brock Purdy.
Yeah, this is year 3.
Right. And then after the season, going into next offseason, is when he first becomes eligible for a contract. And next year, obviously, being year 4, there's no fifth-year option, so he's a quarterback. You should get it done ASAP. I guess where my head was just going there was like, will Brock Purdy treat this as a contract year? But really, I don't think he's that type of player. Like wide receivers and running backs, it's like, oh, contract year, I got to show out. And then they get the money, and it's kind of like Purdy, I think he plays the same all the time. Like, he's just the same guy, And again, quarterback is the easy answer here. Like I said, last year I went with Trent Williams, so I don't want to do the same thing. I'm going to go Christian McCaffrey. I think the health really does – his health really does matter for the success of this team. Although Jordan Mason looks great in the preseason, and he would be a perfectly fine, for a couple of weeks sort of fill it in sort of guy. But, I mean, we saw how game-changing McCaffrey was last year. You take that away, and it's just different. So I'm going to go McCaffrey.
Yeah. I'm going to go a little bit of a different direction, because I do think the offense is going to operate under McCaffrey, or operate through McCaffrey again, like it did this previous season. But I think if McCaffrey, knock on wood, were to go down, I still think the 49ers would still have a shot at a Super Bowl run, so long as, the entire team is, together and playing well, because I think Jordan Mason is good. I honestly think the 49ers should use both backs. Like, I mean, This might sound crazy, but I think McCaffrey can get them down to the goal line and then stick in Jordan Mason to get those touchdowns. That's easy money. So I mean, they're not going to do that because McCaffrey, I mean, you'd probably have to drag him off the field, while he's like scratching and clawing the grass on his way out, because he doesn't want to get subbed out. But yeah, I'm going to go in a little bit of a different direction. I'm not even going to say Trent Williams, even though he's by far their best offensive lineman. I think that as long as Brock Purdy is healthy, the 49ers have a chance to win the Super Bowl. And if he is not healthy, they have no chance to win the Super Bowl. Yeah. I think any other player on the team might be replaceable outside of Trent Williams, but 31 other teams don't have Trent Williams. You know what I mean? And the 49ers might not have him going into the season. We'll see how that contract dispute plays out. But I'm going to go out on a limb and say that since I think their Super Bowl odds depend on Brock Purdy, because I don't think Brandon Allen is going to win them a Super Bowl. I don't think Josh Dobbs is going to win them a Super Bowl. I think he can come in and win a couple games. I don't know exactly what Tanner Mordecai could bring to the table. For all I know, Tanner Mordecai is the next Brock Purdy, for all I know. But everything that I know right now, I would say the one irreplaceable guy is the person putting everything together and distributing the passes. Team MVP, I think it's going to be Brock Purdy this year. He's going to get a massive extension next year. And I guess my runner-up, and this really kind of depends on the way the Ayuk situation plays out, but I could see the team MVP being Deebo Samuel because he's literally been there like every day working his ass off in training camp and like looks in shape. Grant even said like, I think when we were talking about Trent Williams, not being there, Grant's like Deebo's been there.
Yeah.
So yeah, I could see where this might be the scenario where Deebo finally locks back in and puts the team back on his back. Maybe not the way that he did in 2021, but maybe in a different way. Because if Ayuk's not on the team anymore, he'll probably get more of the receiving volume. George Kittle will probably have to step up more. But a lot is yet to be seen because we don't have the answers of what's going to happen, with that contract. It's huge. Yeah. It's huge. And we're less than 2 weeks away from football.
Yes, indeed.
Yep. But really, those are. I feel pretty good about those two picks. Fred Warner would probably be a close third because they already lost Dre Greenlaw. I like D Winters, but I don't know if knock on wood, if Fred Warner had to go down, can D Winters go in there and call plays for the defense? He's a second-year player,
Yeah, nobody's going to replace Fred Warner. So,
and I guess the argument would be Fred Warner's second year was like his big jump to stardom. 2019 was like, his year, but he had Quan Alexander, I think, healthy up until halfway. So you know what? Maybe D Winters is the next Fred Warner, but those are the three guys that I'm picking. Do you have anything else that you want to say about that?
No, I got nothing. I guess the guys that I really explained the most were probably, obviously McCaffrey was my choice, but I started with Purdy and why you might pick him. Just he's the quarterback. And, I think the wise decision is Purdy simply because we saw it against the Eagles 2 years ago in the championship game. Once he was out, throw it out the window. And there's no backup for you guys right now. Josh Dobbs is cool. Allen and then Mordecai. If he hits waivers, the Raiders better put a waiver claim in, But regardless, there's no guy sitting there backing up Purdy that says to me, yeah, he could win an NFC championship. No. Mm-hmm. So Purdy's the right choice. I guess I'm glad that I went with something different just to kind of give another guy a solid explanation or whatnot. But
yeah, the offense is still going to run through McCaffrey. So I get the pick. I get the pick.
Yeah. So
yeah, and like Forrest Gump once said, and that's all I had to say about that. Yeah, that's it for that topic. Real quick, since we're done talking about the Niners for the day, I do have a comment from the Numbers who asks, do you like Amari Gaynor to make the squad?
Ooh. Stomach's making noise.
It's a great question.
It's a great question. Actually, I'm going to send you a tweet. Actually, I want to say I already sent it to the podcast Twitter channel or X. Could be wrong. Yes, I did. Yeah, pull that bad boy up from Tristan Cohn. This is a great way to. One? Yes. Okay. Super big tweet. I guess he has the special Twitter, whatever you call that, subscription or whatever. But
Twitter Blue, you mean?
Yeah. So I'll just read it. During Raiders cutdowns, IR will be notable. So the injured reserve. 2 players can be designated to return from IR without being on the initial 53-man roster, which I want to say this might be a new rule or so. I don't remember this. I always understood to put a player on IR and be eligible to return from IR in the season, they have to go through the cutdown day on the roster. So you have to keep them on the 53, which means you have to cut 1 or 2 other guys to keep those 2 guys. Then you can put them on IR. Then you have 2, spots open. Then you try to get some guys back, or you pick from other teams, right? From waivers and whatnot. That's how I've understood it. But now we have this option where you can put 2 players on IR before the cut downs, and they are still eligible to return from IR. In fact, one team did it today, and I don't remember who it was, but they did it to like a backup running back or something like that. So Tristan Cohn notes that some Raiders options for these IR spots could be Tommy Eichenberg, who we have not seen in the preseason. He has a lower body injury. Amari Burney, this is the reason why I brought this up. He has an undisclosed injury. And frankly, because of Amari Gainer and his breakout performances in this preseason, I was thinking maybe Amari. Oh, shit. Well, I had the wrong Amari here. All right. Same thing, though. You're asking for Amari Gainer. I don't know why my head went to Amari Burney. Obviously, it's confusing because they're both Amaris. Point is, I see Amari Gainer being one of these guys that they put on IR because the linebacker corpse is loaded. In fact, Tommy Eichenberg's probably the other guy. You put them both on IR so you can keep them, and you keep Amari Gainer. Because let's just count the linebackers just off the top of my head here. Spillane, Diablo. There's your starters, right? It's been understood going into the season that Luke Masterson is the third linebacker. You drafted Tommy Eichenberg in the 5th round. You're not cutting him. So that's 4. And then we got the 2 Amaris, who both, I think, deserve a spot. And I think Amari Burney, if you just cut him, I think somebody signs him. I think he's solid in pass coverage. Granted, I would pick Amari Gainer over Amari Burney if it were between the two. I think Amari Gainer flashes on special teams. He flashes on defense. In run stop, he's sideline to sideline. And he's solid, if not good, in pass coverage. He's everything you want in a linebacker. He's just undrafted. He's got the tools. He's got the body. He's got all that. He's just undrafted. He's raw, or whatever you want to call it. So to answer the numbers question here, hell yes. He'd be making the team if I were the head coach or the GM for sure. But let's continue on this tweet. Brendan Faison, a guy who just for some reason continues to be injured. He's an option. And then Trey Taylor, who suffered a knee injury. I don't know how serious it was, but there was like speculation it might have been like a really significant injury. I think if it was, he'd already be on IR by now. But with the way the safety room's kind of shaping out and the fact that he, hasn't gotten to be on the field since like the first preseason game, I think Trey Taylor's the type of option where you can put him on IR and not designate him to return. He's perfectly fine to just put on IR and stash him for next year. I'm cool with that. Kind of like Dalton Wagner last year. Mm-hmm. So he continues. Players must sit out 4 games, and only aforementioned 2 slots are available. If the Raiders want to place anyone else on short-term IR, they must be kept through the 53-man roster, initial Tuesday deadline. Waivers are for any players with less than 4 years of service time. Any other player is normally released. Any player waived can be claimed, and I want to say the waiver claim, order is based off of the draft order. So the Raiders, I want to say 13th in that pecking order. Likely 3 to 8 players will make Tuesday's roster, then inevitably will be released, practice squad, or IR for other waiver claims, trades, and or signings. And you can even go down just to finish it out, I guess. The following notable Raiders would be waived and eligible to be claimed. All 2024 undrafted free agent signings and rookies: Cole Fotheringham, Jaden Grant, Tyreek McAllister, who absolutely blew the doors off against the Niners. That I would keep him. Charles Snowden, another guy who played really well in this game, and if they want a 5th edge rusher, he'd be the guy. Matthew Butler, Byron Young, 2 young defensive tackles. I feel like one of them probably makes a team. Marquand McCall, who's already been released or waived, I guess. Jordan Meredith, who had a really good preseason and is a guy, who last season filled in really well. I think they'd be insane to let him go, but this is a new offensive scheme, and offensive line coach, so you never know. Nessa J. Silvera, Sam Webb, who had the big pass deflection to get Purdy intercepted, Britton Brown, Sincere McCormick, Luke Masterson, Ellerson Smith, and Christian Wilkerson. So that was a whole lot of stuff about waivers and, the IR, settings, if you will, in the league. I'm very intrigued to see who gets cut and who stays. Amari Gaynor, Tyreek McAllister, those are two guys that are right on the bubble this year, and I'd like to see them both be kept. But every year it feels like the Raiders, and obviously those are past regimes, and this is a new one with Tom Telesco, but every year, like we talked about it with Grant, where it's like usually Niner teams are like deep, but lately it feels like they're not deep. There's no like surprise cuts. They're top heavy. Whereas the Raiders, to me, it's like they have a lot of depth. They're not too top heavy. Every year, there's always a surprise cut for me. There's always like this one guy where I'm like, whoa, they let him go? Like he was the star of the preseason. We'll see.
Just goes to show how much preseason actually matters.
1,000%. Yeah. I think what really matters is how many players do you have at the position? So, I mean, really, if they still feel the same way about Luke Masterson and they are for sure keeping Eichenberg, unless they put Eichenberg and Bernie on full-term IR, maybe Gaynor does have a long shot. I just think he played his ass off to the point where it's like, I don't care. I'm cutting a safety for him because this guy can play special teams and play it well. So
the numbers also ask a thought on trading Tyree Wilson or keeping him as a defensive tackle.
Another fantastic question. Because I have failed to bring up Tyree Wilson, at least as far as like I've seen a lot of chatter about people like, should we trade him? Like somebody mentioned offering Tyree Wilson for somebody's like backup quarterback. And I was like, wow. Some fans is just we're at that point. I would still keep him. I wouldn't trade him yet. I mean, I know in theory it's like trade him while he still has value, but I don't see any major any major flashes from the other backup defensive tackles. I think having Tyree Wilson in his frame and his ability, hopefully, to like still develop is worth keeping at the very worst at defensive tackle, but also as the emergency edge rusher. I think he still has value to this team, and I wouldn't trade him yet. So,
yeah, but with that was the show. Oh, hold on. Let me fix that. That might have been our best episode yet. What do you think, Mike?
I genuinely, I think I might agree.
Yeah, I really liked it. I just want to give a quick shout out to Grant Cohn again for coming on, giving us an hour of his time. It really means a lot. I will be hitting up Grant after the show to thank him again. Super huge. Like it helps. Like, the thing about YouTube is I think that you could be, a good YouTube channel, but if you don't put yourself out there and get the exposure that you need, it just takes longer to grow. And like, I'm not even saying that like I'm upset with, what we've got here going so far. I genuinely like, I'm at a point where I just love to hop on the channel and just like talk,
Yeah.
Like
It's
you
easy.
and I already talk regularly anyway. And so we're just broadcasting it for everybody to see. And I think like, it makes for quality football talk. So, we're able to get like great questions from Joel, from Papa J, from the numbers, going back, we had Fonzie, we had, we've had Anthony like throughout the entire thing. Like it's been awesome. So, today was another great episode. Please consider, smashing the like button. I want you to, if you're a Niner fan, I want you to Nick Bosa that like button. If you're a Raider fan, I want you to Max Crosby that like button. And if you're a Raven fan, I want you to do what that one running back did in the elevator a long time ago. I should not make a joke about that. That's really horrible. And that's the end of our channel. This is the last episode. No.
I'll throw in one last thing here. Actually, two things. First off, just to continue on your appreciation for Mr. Grant Cohn, who I appreciate again coming on this podcast and giving quite a bit of time, like very generously to us. Before the episode, started, we asked him like, hey, like how much time are we kind of looking at here? And I was thinking he might say like, oh, like 30 minutes. He said an hour. I was like, I don't know if it showed on my face. I was like, oh wow, like that's awesome.
Yeah, I think last time he wanted to give us a full hour, but like I think we had to like switch a couple things around, because he had another show to still do, or something like that. But no, dude, like seriously, I just asked Grant if he wanted to do the show. He's like, yeah, let's do it. And it was just so easy. He's super easy to get a hold of, work with, I guess you could say, to work with, but it honestly doesn't feel like work. Like, we just had him on, we asked him questions, and it was awesome. So,
yeah,
I really do appreciate Grant. Like I said, his channel is in the description. So, like his video, subscribe to his channel. Like Papa J said, he wasn't a fan of Grant before this show, but he considers himself a fan now. And honestly, like that's what it's all about. Like sometimes I feel like you get you kind of misunderstand people because of what you've heard from other people, but if you actually listen to somebody speak, it's different. You know what I mean? Like, have an open mind when you're listening to somebody, because they might offer a perspective that you hadn't considered yet. Like you can still disagree with somebody, but like, maybe you might learn something, or like, hey, I hadn't thought about it that way. And that's one thing I really like about listening to Grant, because like, it's like, even though like we referenced earlier, contract A+, maybe I don't agree with every single take that he's ever had, but it's still, it's pushing the conversation, and a lot of the times, if you can get yourself in a position to where maybe you think one way and a question is posed and it makes you think, why? Why does so and so feel this way? I think it like maybe it helps you better understand your position, while also considering somebody else thinks differently of it. Because at the end of the day, we're all raised differently. We all think differently. So it's just kind of nice to respect other people's points of view. So
yep,
yeah,
absolutely, yeah. And then just to build off of that with Grant Cohn, also, I would say for this channel specifically, like getting comments is so big. Just for talking points, like just the last two comments from the numbers, right?
Yeah, the numbers.
Yeah, I know, I know you and I both, we appreciate that, because like we might forget to mention things sometimes. We might just not have, or we might think we don't have the time for it or whatever, and then somebody comes up with a great question, and it just creates this massive conversation that's really good stuff. Whether it's just a good conversation or like, wow, like after talking about it, I didn't think about it that way, or anything like that. Like, to me, just thank you to everybody who obviously views, subscribes, likes this channel, but also obviously to everybody who's commented like at any point. And obviously, it's pretty low likelihood that everybody that's done any of those things will be watching right now. But every here and there, it's nice to just say, hey, thank you guys, to people like, and especially Pia. And for me, a special thank you to Paulina. We did our Final Battle of the Bay episode.
Yeah.
You dropped it on Saturday or Tuesday.
Yeah, I think I dropped it Tuesday.
Yeah, and it's a great video.
Or Wednesday.
Yeah, great video. There were moments where I was filming, and we have things where I filmed, there are things that you filmed, but also like the moments like the very beginning with us talking and, looking at the crowd and everything, like, Paulina did a lot of filming for us. So I just wanted to say thank you for that for sure. And again, thank you to Pia and anybody else who has helped, liked, subscribed, commented for this channel. Special thank you.
Yeah, no, without you guys, we I wouldn't say like it just helps the channel grow and get more comments from, people who help push the conversation like what I was talking about. And so, just having the support and not just getting negative feedback all the time, I think just kind of helps to continue to put ourselves out there. Not that I necessarily care what people think of me on the internet, which I will say, I made that joke about the Ravens player, and it's an extreme poor taste, but at the end of the day, it's a joke. So it's not meant to be taken seriously. Just wanted to clear that up. It's not something that should be joked about, I think, but I did. And I apologize to anyone who might have been offended. Not saying that anyone was, and yeah. But yeah, no, this channel's awesome. And I want to say, Mike, I appreciate you as well. Without you, there is no silver and gold. There is no silver and gold. Right. I'll give you a virtual handshake. Put it there.
Oh, wait.
Yeah.
Whoa.
It's weird. We're going palm to palm. That's it's like weird. It's like a.
No, I gotta be over here. Oh, that makes sense. There we go.
And there we go.
Yeah. There we go. That still looks weird though. It's like,
yeah.
Wait, do it again. Do it again.
But it won't ever beat that time that I was coughing, during that one episode, and I was off screen.
Here, give me a handshake right now. Do it. Never mind.
Yeah,
it's not a handshake.
I think with that, we're out of here. Everybody, thank you so much. Please consider liking, subscribing, and commenting on our videos if you have any thoughts. We take time to read the comments. And yeah. Any last words, Mike?
Oh, fuck. I'm so sorry. Fuck. Okay, I don't know what our plan is for our next pod. Obviously, I'm assuming our next pod will be a preview of week 1.
Next week.
Okay.
Should be next week, because that way we can preview week 1, and then after that, our next pod will probably be Tuesday.
Yeah, that's what I was. Well, you and I can talk about that, but basically, hopefully, we can try to aim for the same day every week. It might not be perfect. We might have things going on,
Yeah.
But hopefully, we can aim for the same day every week, so at least our viewers know, oh, it's Tuesday night or it's Monday night. Let's go.
Yeah.
Just something that I'm kind of hoping for. But again, it's probably not going to be perfect. There's going to be things that come up for us in our livelihoods. So we'll see how it goes.
Yep. But anyways, everybody, thank you so much. Like I said, subscribe. We'll be back most likely next week to give our week 1 preview. And from then on out, it should be 1 episode every single week. I know it's been a little bit more inconsistent in the off season, but there should be things to talk about every single week. So no excuses. Mike, stop being lazy and get on the podcast. And it's all Mike's fault. No, I'm just kidding. It takes 2 to tango. Everybody, have a great night. See you in the next episode.
Peace.